No New Year's Day to celebrate. No chocolate covered candy hearts to give away. No first of spring, no song to sing. In fact, here's just another ordinary day. No April rain, no flowers bloom, no wedding Saturday within the month of June. But what it is something true, made up of these three words that I must say to you. I just called to say I love you. I just called to say how much I care.
How is that for a start to your show on Monday morning? Remember that the minute we start this show every day, our phone lines are wide open to you. So if you want to just call and say you love us, tell us how much you care, well, ding, dang it, gosh darn it, you can do that very thing. But we play some Stevie Wonder to set the tone for another week here on the show, because it was on this day in 1984, 41 years ago, that Stevie had his first UK #1 hit with I Just Called to Say I Love You. That was from the soundtrack of the film The Woman in Red, starring none other than Kelly LeBrock. It was 18 years after Stevie Wonder's chart debut in 1966 that he was once again at #1 with I Just Called to Say I Love You. Good Monday morning. It is the 8th of September. Welcome to the program. Thank you very much for stopping by, spending some of your time with us. Did you notice that moon last night? When I got up this morning, I was wondering if there was a light on in the backyard when I looked out my window, because that full moon was casting such a light over the land. I do enjoy those things. But then I must admit, I was a little bit distracted on the way to work, keeping a half an eye on the road and half an eye on that big bright moon up in the sky. But we made it here just fine. And to those of you who sent me messages over the weekend, first of all, thanks for that too. I mean, I love that you make time for this show every day and we interact and engage in conversation. And even when I'm not here, we keep those lines of communication open. Social media platforms, right? X and Instagram at Farwell_WR. And my email, I'm checking it constantly. Just ask my beloved, Mike at 570news.com. And many of you were pointing out that, you know, Mike, as much as you dislike that team that shall not be named, you cannot possibly ignore the passing of one of hockey's greats. And certainly I cannot, nor would I, because, of course, he was at one time the president of the Toronto Maple Leafs as well. Mr. Ken Dryden. It seems too young to me at 78. I always feel like 80 should be the benchmark there. But Mr. Dryden, of course, not the only person to pass in his 70s or even sooner. We know that. So condolences, absolutely. What a loss, though, not just to the hockey world, but to Canada. In so many meaningful ways did Ken Dryden play a role in this country, from the exploits on the ice that we cheered, whether he was playing for that team that shall not be named, or how about Team Canada, right? And the Summit Series, et cetera. So much to admire about the man who gave so much. Obviously, the kind of final stage of the public life, I would say, was his time as an MP. But there was a time about a quarter century ago myself when he was the president of the Toronto Maple Leafs, and I was a reporter at a radio station in Toronto, and I had the opportunity to interview Ken Dryden. And even as a diehard Leafs fan, I knew exactly the presence that I was in. And I really enjoyed that conversation. I had that fanboy thing going for me at the time, and certainly understood the magnitude of the moment, at least for a young reporter's career. And the great thing about interviewing Ken Dryden is if you asked him one question, you got 10 minutes of audio to use. So certainly a loss, not just for the game of hockey, but for the country of Canada. Kevin is on the phone with us this morning. Good morning, Kevin.
Hi, good morning, Mike. Hi, you happy?
Am I happy? I've never been happier.
That's good. Okay, Mike, remember last week we were talking about the Conestoga College, with the orientation of the students, and how they went to their orientation and they said they canceled?
Yes, they had their classes. Yeah, their programs were discontinued even when they showed up for orientation. They were told, sorry, that program's no longer being offered.
Yeah. You know what that reminds me of, Mike? I'm a fan of Seinfeld, and I'm watching Seinfeld all the time, since for many, many, many years. There's an episode that Jerry is booked a rental car, and he goes to pick up his rental car, and he says, well, we don't have a car. And he says, well, you know how to take the reservation, but you don't know how to hold the reservation.
Oh, Kevin, that's a great point. Our life is just a Seinfeld. It's just a Seinfeld episode, isn't it? So I made the reservation. You took that reservation, but then you can't hold that reservation. Honor your end of it. Yes, very much like what we saw happen to some students at Conestoga College just a couple of weeks ago. Really rotten way for it all to go down. I was one of those people last night, or this morning, I guess, regretting my choices last night. I do love me some NFL. It was a big weekend to start the new season. And yes, my favorite team, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the black and gold steel curtain, although the defense didn't look much like a steel curtain to me. But they were winners in week number 1. And despite my dislike of the quarterback choice the Pittsburgh Steelers have made, I'm still cheering for the team. And they had a good week, starting 1-0 with a win over the New York Jets. But last night, I just checked in on that Bills game and saw the Bills were trailing by a considerable margin. So I thought, I don't need to watch this one. It's 10 o'clock. It's time to get to bed. I got to go to work in the morning. I want to be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed for this show. And what did Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills go and do? What a comeback against the Baltimore Ravens. And as a fan of the Steelers, who play in the same division as Baltimore, I thank you, Buffalo. I thank you, Josh Allen, for that, because that just helps the cause for my Pittsburgh Steelers in the division 1 week into the season. But we had some dandy games to start things off. And if you're keeping track of these things, I think our speed camera on Snyder's Road in Baden has been vandalized, is it 3 or 4 times? I think 3, maybe 4. But hey, we got nothing in Baden on the folks in Toronto who really dislike at least one of their speed cameras in the city, because that speed camera in Toronto this weekend vandalized for a 7th time. One speed camera cut right down 7 times. So we've got some catching up to do in that department. Not that I'm endorsing it, but it's just a reminder of how unpopular speed cameras are, not just here.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
All right, let's get into this Farwell Show 5 for this Monday morning, the 8th of September. Number 1, speaking of speed cameras, are they bad for tourism? More than 70% of speed camera fines handed out in Wellington County this year have been issued to drivers from outside the county. More than 200,000 speed camera tickets have been handed out in Wellington County in the first 8 months of this year. Number 2, the summer. This one. Yes, the summer that we're still in. I emphasize that. And it's been our warmest in 70 years. Summer doesn't end for a couple of weeks yet. But according to the weather station at the University of Waterloo, we had 34 days with temperatures above 30 degrees from June through August. It all adds up to our hottest summer since 1955. Number 3 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, a health alert has been issued in Guelph after more than 70 drug poisonings in the city since mid-August. The Wellington Guelph Drug Strategy says that's more than double the number of poisonings compared to the same period a year ago. 3 people died from overdoses. Authorities believe the rise in drug poisonings is likely linked to sedatives and veterinary tranquilizers, which are not opioids. So naloxone will not reverse their effects. Number 4, you may remember us talking about the Freedom Center in Cambridge a few weeks ago. When I was away, Brock was filling in while the center was holding a bike and walk-a-thon to raise money for their vision of building supportive housing for veterans. The event at the end of August exceeded its fundraising target of $5,000, bringing in more than $8,400 in donations. And number 5 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning.
When I was young, it seemed that life was so wonderful. A miracle.
Oh, yeah, the British band Supertramp announcing this morning that its lead singer and co-founder Rick Davies has died after a long battle with blood cancer. Davies died Saturday at the age of 81. He and Roger Hodgson formed Supertramp in 1969 and co-wrote the band's music and produced hits including Goodbye Stranger and what you're hearing right now, The Logical Song. And that is your Farwell Show 5 for this Monday morning. Just before we take a break, let's go back to the phones. Waterloo Mayor Dorothy McCabe on the line. Now I feel like I've done something wrong already today. Am I being taken to task, Mayor McCabe? What did I say?
Oh, not at all, Mike, but I do appreciate that I can surprise you sometimes. No, I just heard what you were saying about the passing of Ken Dryden.
Yes.
And and I was telling my kids over the weekend, years ago when they were little, they were born in like 2005 and 2007. I had the opportunity to introduce them both to the great Ken Dryden because when he was the Minister of Families and Social Development, because the work that he did on the child care helped to start the Best Inspiring Minds through the Best Start program that the federal government rolled out years ago. And they went to the Inspiring Minds daycare in Wellesley. And they also had an opportunity. There was some event he was holding, a public skate, and so I have pictures somewhere of them and these little kids standing with this giant of a man, and it's just a wonderful memory to have of someone who was such a great Canadian. So
he really was, and I'm glad you shared that, Dorothy, because whatever your political stripe, we could argue that it was Ken Dryden who shepherded in that national child care policy that remains great policy to this day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely, and he really cared deeply about it, and I also have a picture of my oldest daughter when she was just about 2 months old, and he's so big, like he's holding her, and his hand is like almost the size of her tiny body, and it was so I got him to sign that picture, which is somewhere in my house. But no, it just brought back some really lovely memories of a person who, like you said, gave so much to Canada on many, many levels.
Certainly did. Really appreciate you sharing that memory with us. Thanks, Mayor McCabe.
Yep. Okay. Take care, Mike.
You too. Bye now.
Bye.
Waterloo Mayor Dorothy McCabe just thought she'd call in, be a part of the conversation today. And interestingly enough, we're going to go from Mayor McCabe to Mayor Verbanovic in Kitchener. Only the best guests for you on this show, okay? Whether they're invited or they just want to randomly call. And you're always welcome to randomly call, whether you're a local mayor or anyone else. That's what this show is all about, some conversation. We'll talk to Kitchener Mayor Barry Verbanovic after this quick timeout because City of Kitchener, according to a new report, is going to be tens of millions of dollars short of development charges thanks to a change from the province. So how do you make up a shortfall like that? We'll talk about it with the Mayor of Kitchener next on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. A report that the City of Kitchener's Planning Committee will consider this week suggests that the city will be short upwards of $60 million in development charges thanks to a change that the province is making to how those charges are collected. So how, as a municipality, do you accommodate for this change? Kitchener Mayor Barry Verbanovic joins us to talk more about it. And let's get to the heart of that, Mayor Verbanovic. When you hear numbers of $50 to $60 million in development charge shortfalls, how does something like this happen?
Yeah, so you know what, Mike, what it's really important for people to understand is what we're talking about is really the potential for a deferral in revenue over the next 2 years. So we see development continuing to occur as it has in recent years. We know that our development charges will get deferred anywhere between 6 months to 2 years, and that will mean that we won't have that cash flow coming into that fund and going towards projects, for example, like the Kitchener Indoor Rec Complex that are being paid for partially from development charges. And so, ultimately what that means is it's kind of like having, a credit card and having to pay debt on that credit card. So we're going to lose the revenue temporarily, but more importantly, we're going to have to pay interest or lose some interest because we also collected interest on deferred revenues going forward. And that's estimated in the range of $650,000 a year.
So is this report then, Mayor Verbanovic, a way of making council aware and saying, hey, we need to look at different ways of financing things or managing the revenues that we do have?
Absolutely. And it's also, putting at the forefront part of the advocacy that we've been working on with the provincial and federal government as they look at things like development charges, looking at the deferral of them and saying, you know what, all of these policy decisions, while they may make sense right now because we want to stimulate the construction industry and getting more housing built quicker, they do have financial implications. And therefore those financial implications need to be considered by all orders of government as they make their policy decisions. And ultimately, municipalities need to be kept whole if we're going to make the necessary investments in, roads, sewer, water, and recreational facilities, as an example, in a timely manner.
So you just made me think of something that I think is important in this, and that is that these changes are, I guess I would say, pro-developer. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but by deferring these development charges, it should, I think, stimulate developers to be interested in building because it's saving them some of these upfront costs.
Yeah, so I think two things are true, and you're absolutely right there. One of the things that we're hearing is that the development industry can't move forward right now because the numbers don't make sense. And so things like deferring some of their costs certainly helps them out because it allows them to take the capital they have and apply it to the construction of the building. For things like long-term care homes, where not only are they deferred, but in fact are being waived, I mean, that will have an impact on us in terms of our DC bylaw. And, over the fullness of time, those are issues and concerns that will impact how quickly we can make investments in infrastructure going forward.
So we just heard last week, Mayor Verbanovic, that the city of Kitchener, along with Waterloo and I'm sure other municipalities, but were awarded money through the Building Faster Fund from the province. In Kitchener's case, more than $10 million, if memory, to help make up for these other changes?
Well, and certainly some of that will help, and it's allowing us, to invest. And I have to say, I'm really proud of our team and our local, development industry and everybody that helps make sure things move forward. We were only one of 11 municipalities in the province of Ontario that in a row. And in fact, out of those 11, we were the largest of the municipalities. And it takes, effort on everybody's part. $2 million that we got between last year and this year will certainly help in that regard and allow us to put some of those dollars, or all of those dollars rather, into these kinds of projects that are eligible for use by this fund. This report, as you pointed out earlier, is really to make sure council understands here's what the impact is of these policy decisions. And, it will have a cash flow impact. Probably the easiest thing to say is it's similar to having a credit card debt. And so as a city, we're going to have to pay interest on that money if we're continuing to spend it. And in the case of something like the Kitchener Indoor Rec Complex, we have spent that money, and so therefore there'll be some debt associated with that. And similarly, there'll be lost revenues because we're no longer allowed to charge interest on revenue deferrals through the DC fund.
There's been a great deal of conversation in recent months about the need for a new fiscal arrangement between the Ontario government and its 400 plus municipalities. Does this change concern you in any way? Does it make municipal finances unsustainable in any way?
Listen, I think what it does is emphasize the importance of having that dialogue with both the provincial and the federal order of government. You know, we know we're in a historically unique period of time in terms of the challenges that we're dealing with. And all of us together need to really do two things. Number one, look at how do we, the building industry, because right now things have essentially ground to a halt unless it's projects that were already underway. And so we know to keep people working, to get housing built, we need to kickstart that, across the province, and quite frankly, and across the country. And so some sort of federal and provincial policy decisions like a freeze on HST for a period of time, like a freeze or deferral on DCs, all help in that regard. I think it's important to say initially, at least, that this is for a period. It should be for a period of time. Then we get into the broader policy discussion, which gets into exactly what you're talking about, is who should pay for growth, how is it paid for, and then what does this look like? And part of that is this conversation on a new fiscal arrangement between municipalities and upper orders of government, like the province and the federal government.
Mayor Verbanovic, as always, we appreciate your time on the show. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Always a pleasure to join you as well, Michael. Thank you so much.
Kitchener Mayor Barry Verbanovic giving us some further insight into that development charge shortfall that a report to the city's planning committee will get a closer look at today. And when you hear that a municipality is staring down a shortfall in the tens of millions of dollars, obviously it raises eyebrows. I can understand this from the provincial end of things. The change in these development charges. So rather than those doing the building having to pay those development charges up front, when the permit for building is issued, they get deferred until occupancy begins. But that means in the meantime, between time, the municipality is on the hook for funding this, whether it does so through reserves or using the credit card analogy that Mayor Verbanovic shared with us in that conversation. And it just leads me to wonder this, because the way it is right now, using that credit card analogy and the municipalities being on the hook for this, that means you and me and our property taxes are footing this bill. And I can't help but wonder if it shouldn't be income and or corporate taxes footing this bill, i.e. through provincial coffers as opposed to municipal. We know that municipal budgets are strained unlike they've ever been strained before. And even though temporary, this is another burden placed on the municipal budget, which is on the backs of property taxpayers in a given community. And I've heard from many who say it's getting awfully expensive around here. So we'll see how this sorts itself out. The good thing is it could and or should stimulate building. The challenge becomes footing that bill even on an interim basis. All right, we're going to get you to the 570 News Center for an update. And then when we left on Friday, a story was beginning to develop about a video that surfaced of an arrest regional police made at the encampment in Kitchener. Let's talk about it coming up on the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
TV.
We were late into the show on Friday and really into our final hour as this story really began to develop and then accelerate through the afternoon. It started with a short video about 16 seconds in length that showed regional police arresting a man at the encampment at Weber and Victoria in Kitchener. Rhythm and Blues Cambridge issued a statement about the arrest saying, and I quote, "We are heartbroken and outraged by what happened at the local encampment with Waterloo Regional Police and a black man in our community." police responded to that statement and shared their version of events, which included more than a dozen attempts to request that the man exit the tent where he had been hiding, and he would not willingly comply with those multiple requests. It did ultimately end up with the man's arrest, and a handgun was recovered. Marjorie Knight is the founder of Rhythm and Blues Cambridge and joins us for a conversation. Marjorie, good morning.
Good morning, Mike.
What was your initial reaction that prompted that statement when you saw the video?
You know, Mike, I was really taken aback, and I was pretty shocked, to tell you the truth. I saw a situation where I saw about 5 policemen with long guns in very close proximity to a tent. I saw a man's head pop out, and we were away to the races. Kicked the man, you know, whether it was head, chest, or groin, I don't know. It's not America's Funniest Home Video Game, but he kicked this man hard enough for him to roll over, at which point he was jumped on by several people and arrested. And it really, really shocked me. The man is in a tent. He has multiple guns pointed at him. Where is he going to go? What is he going to do? How is he going to react? Was that level of violence truly needed? I mean, we have cases where we have people barricaded in houses with weapons that they talk to them until they bring them out. And, you know, the arrest is, you know, incident free. There's got to be a better way than this. And, you know, it's going to affect us, because the fact is that in our region, as was reported maybe 4 or 5 years ago, use of force is always more when it is directed towards a black, brown, racialized person. And this brings it back to us in very strong terms. And it's upsetting. It's very upsetting.
Having heard the Regional Police Service's response to this, Marjorie, and that more than a dozen attempts were made to, requesting the individual to come out of the tent, and those requests were not complied with, and ultimately a handgun was recovered at the scene of this. Does that change your perspective in any way?
Not really, because I understand the seriousness of that. Absolutely. Public safety is above all very important. But he put his head out of the tent. So he came out of the tent. So I thought that at least meant that there was some kind of progress. I surely understand public safety, but again, was that level of violence truly warranted? That's my question. And in a situation where, you know, the police know very well how we feel about this, and that we are very sensitive to and upset about on many occasions use of force against racialized people. Have they thought about this? Have they talked about it? Have we looked at ways that things can be done, that things can be changed? Does it have to always be so violent? That's my question.
And it certainly is when we see police, and I know there is body cam footage from officers attending here as well, which I have not yet seen. But I think what we're getting here is, you know, a recorded example of what it is like when there are reports called into police of somebody with a handgun and the danger that presents and the response to it. Would you offer any ideas as to how we do this differently? I mean, I understand how uncomfortable it is to have seen this. I think we can understand the tragic outcomes that could have occurred had the individual not been disarmed. But how else might we go about responding to a situation like this?
Well, I mean, and those are conversations I think we need to have, probably as a community. To understand what one side of it is and the other side it is, and how we can come together to look at how policing is. Listen, man, policing is a profession. They're professionals. They're trained how to do things. They're trained into into escalation issues, how to deal with that, how to deal with people who are, on drugs or having a mental health breakdown. We go through all of these things, all these trainings. We're told this. So then if we have all this training and all these things, surely we can find a better way of doing things.
Marjorie, I appreciate the time you've made for the show this morning. Thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Marjorie Knight is the founder of Rhythm and Blues Cambridge, the organization that issued the statement last week, reading, and I'll quote again, "We are heartbroken and outraged by what happened at the local encampment with Waterloo Regional Police and a black man in our community." And regional police responded to that, explaining in greater detail what had gone into making that arrest. Multiple reports. Multiple people had phoned into police reporting a man with a gun in the Weber and Victoria area. Police respond and eventually have to physically restrain a man who would not comply with more than a dozen requests to exit a tent. There was a kick. I've seen the video myself. It looks very clearly to have been in the arm or upper arm of the suspect, which was meant to dislodge any potential weapon that may have existed because the suspect was not showing his hands. And an arrest was made without injury. But I understand how watching police in our community do their job in a high-risk situation can be jarring. Ultimately, a handgun was recovered. So I think we can piece these things together and understand the threat that did exist. And I hear Marjorie's point, too, when you talk about people being barricaded inside homes and how instances like that are settled. I would submit to you that it is different in a tent as opposed to a building, because from that tent, even if police did know, and I'm not sure if they did, if anybody else was inside the tent, that changes things for sure. But also, inside a home, the damage that can be done can only be done to oneself, not others around. If there's a gun inside a tent, I think we can understand how any shots fired, were they to have been fired, posed a risk to others in the immediate area. Not just the police responding, but other people in that encampment, people on a busy street corner. We just don't know where it goes. I, again, completely understand how uncomfortable we are when we see things like this happening in real time, caught on video. And I just wonder then how else we would respond. I don't think it matters a tinker's darn at that point who the person is inside the tent. They are simply a person that is posing a threat to the community, and police have a job to remove that threat and ensure public safety. You get these calls about somebody with a gun, you have to respond. Your thoughts? I'm sure you've seen the video, heard the story by now. We heard from Marjorie Knight with Rhythm and Blues Cambridge, and now we get a chance to hear from you on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Was that level of violence truly warranted? That's my question. And in a situation where the police know very well how we feel about this and that we are very sensitive to and upset about on many occasions use of force against racialized people. Have they thought about this? Have they talked about it? Have we looked at ways that things can be done, that things can be changed? Does it have to always be so violent? That's my question.
I will be the first to admit I'm pretty good at quarterbacking situations on Monday mornings, particularly when it comes to political decisions that I disagree with or I think could be sped along. I haven't the foggiest how better to respond to multiple reports from citizens in our community who say they see somebody with a gun at a busy intersection. What goes into the training and professionalism of those charged with responding, I don't know. And I don't know what it would feel like to live under the microscope that an organization like a police organization lives under, because this high-risk, highly charged arrest was captured by multiple people who were recording as police did their jobs. And police, too, with body camera technology, were recording the interaction with the suspect who was believed to have a gun at the encampment at Weber and Victoria. Let's get to the phones and hear from you at 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. Tony, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Good. I believe the police were called with someone with a gun. They weren't being called there for someone who was jaywalking. I watched the video. I think what they did was necessary. They asked him to get out many times. Poking your head out of a tent is not complying. I'm sorry. I'm on the side with the cops on this one. I'm glad they did what they had to do. They got a call with someone with a weapon. People have to start realizing, you know what? Comply. Answer the questions. Do what they ask, and it all goes away if you have nothing to hide. When you start doing stuff like that, the adrenaline's going. They don't know if he's got a gun in there. They can easily shoot through a tent. I mean, it's easy to make those calls from the cheap seats, folks, but when you're there and you're watching what they're doing, I wouldn't want to do their job, and I think they acted professionally and accordingly. That's my opinion, Mike. All
right, Tony, thanks for sharing your opinion. Certainly when it comes to poking one's head out of the tent, the big piece of that is, where are that person's hands? Because now they have a sight line, and if there is reason to believe, and there were multiple calls that there was a person with a gun, that's where we're still in a really difficult spot there. Where are that person's hands, and what are those hands holding? Paul, good morning.
Good morning. How you doing?
Good.
I think we're both pretty much on the same page on this, with one minor exception. The police were responding legitimately to a gun call. The suspect was inside of a tent. The suspect, in the end, turned out he did have a gun. When he refused to comply, when he was dragged out of that tent, they still didn't know where the gun was, whether he had it in his hands or not. When guns are drawn, it means that deadly force may be used, and I'm sorry, but they should have put a bullet in him.
Okay, now, easy.
Yeah, now, listen, let me finish. If he'd have come out shooting, who are they going to blame then when some innocent bystander gets shot and hurt or killed? They're going to blame the police for that. Are they not?
I'm not certain they would blame the police for that, Paul. If somebody comes out shooting, I can certainly understand the idea of returning fire, for sure.
You have somebody who is running around with a gun, and I'm assuming if he's got a gun in his hand, he's threatening people.
Okay, but see, now we have to be careful here. We don't know that the individual had a gun in his hand. We know a gun was recovered. I think we can make the connection, but nothing has yet been proven in court.
But they were called because of what?
Yes,
saw
multiple
a guy
people.
with a gun.
That's right.
Okay, so if he's got a gun, he is a deadly threat to those around him.
Agreed.
And if things had have gone sideways and he'd have come out shooting, everybody would have blamed the police. And I'm sorry, but at that point, it would not matter what color the person's skin was. This was a human being with a gun. And to try and make excuses because of, hey, he was homeless. I don't know if he was or not. He was in a homeless encampment. Should we give him a little leeway, say, well, maybe he needs a gun to defend himself in a homeless encampment? how much leeway do we have to give somebody before it's known that he has a gun?
Yeah, listen, okay,
he's
Paul.
resisting. He doesn't want to come out.
All right, I get you. How much leeway? And see, nobody's giving that kind of leeway just because this individual may be unsheltered. I'm not even certain that we have determined whether or not this person was living at the encampment or went there to hide in a tent. I'm not positive of that. But I don't think anybody is trying to excuse this away as the need to be carrying a gun because one is living unsheltered. I think that's a big distraction from the issue at hand here. And I'm also not certain that the public outrage would be that police did something inappropriate if an innocent bystander had been shot. I think the conversation might have turned then to guns and how people get a hold of them and those sorts of things. I'm not sure. That's a guessing game that perhaps Paul and I would guess differently on. But I do understand Paul's point of view when it comes to the threat and the immediate threat that is posed on a busy street corner when you hear reports of a person with a firearm. Obviously, there is a threat to public safety. The public has called you to do your job as police officers. And as you're doing your job, it's captured on video for all to see. Andre, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. Wow. Oh. But anyway, to me, the police serve and protect. It's not about the color. I love you, Margin Knight, respect, but this has nothing to do with it. The guy stick his head out because he probably tried to run away or see if his chances are. Another thing is, when the police is there, I got arrested many times, you know it, Mike, and if you don't collaborate, well, they have to charge adrenaline pump, and the person that has a gun is fearing. You never know what can happen. So, one, they could have gassed him, and two, they could have ordered him to throw his gun out and put his hands out before he pops his head. So, to me, well done, because it could have been worse. And I do not like listening from my ears a guy who owns a weapon like Paul and says that they should have shoot him. To me, that doesn't sound good.
Yeah, I hear where you're coming from on that one for sure. That was a bit of an extreme response, in my opinion. And just remember, when Andre says, you know, if you were asked, you should have thrown the gun out. There were more than a dozen appeals from the police officers attending for the individual to come out of the tent, and presumably, I haven't seen any body cam footage, but presumably with hands visible, so police knew if indeed the reports that were called in were accurate reports, and that is that somebody had a gun. Again, there was a gun recovered from the scene. And this is kind of, I think, where we are at these days, aren't we? We have a segment of the public, multiple people, called police because they saw a person with a gun and they wanted police to act on that report. And the other side of it is when police do act on that report, there will be criticism, in some cases, sharp criticism about the way that they carried out their business. I think if we take a big, deep breath here and look at this in a high level, zero injury, certainly nobody dead, and a successful arrest of an individual who multiple people believed were a threat to the community in that moment. So the outcome certainly could have been far, far worse. An update from the 570 News Center is on the way. And then Premier Ford says no more animal testing, at least not pet animals in the province. But is animal testing necessary for medical advancements? We'll talk about it next on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
This is where today's topics turn into today's talking points. It's local and it's Democratic radio at its finest. This is the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio.
You can't be experimenting on dogs. They're part of our families. They're cats. You know, go with the mice, go with the rats, no problem. But these are pets, and it's done. You can't do it anymore. Now I'm going to start looking for everyone else. If there's anyone else out there that's doing this to animals, come clean, because we're going to catch you. And it's just terrible. You can tell I'm an animal lover, but it's just terrible what they're doing.
The Mike Farwell Show continues
on 570 News Radio.
That, of course, is Ontario Premier Doug Ford saying that this province will implement a ban on research on animals. Now, of course, those in the field, medicine, for example, will say such research is critical to medical advancements. Arthur Brown is a professor in the Department of Anatomy and Cell Biology at Western University, joins us for a conversation. Arthur, good morning.
Hi, good morning, Mike.
I guess, first of all, I mean, a clip like that, which we just heard from Ontario Premier Ford, kind of pulls at the heartstrings of any animal and or pet lover. Dogs and cats, how often are those animals being used in testing?
Oh, it's like very, very infrequently. It's in the scope of things, it's rare. I think it's important to start off by trying to figure out why do we even do it? Why is there this animal research and what's going on with it? And so I'd like to just start by introducing something that's not often in the conversation, which is the idea of human suffering. And the reason for doing this kind of research is because there's just so much human suffering, and the researcher is really trying to come up with ways to reduce human suffering and loss of life. And that requires years of research. And when it's time, when it's almost ready for human use, then it has to go through some sort of animal model. There's no other way to get it done.
In what ways has animal research in the past led to medical breakthroughs that have helped alleviate human suffering?
Oh, my goodness. There's so many examples. In fact, you can't find an example of when it's not. So if you go to, if you look behind the Shoppers Drug Mart, the pharmacy counter, every one of those medications went through animal testing. There's no other way. It's not legal for it not to go through animal testing. In order to get approval by things like the FDA, you need to go through animal models to show both safety and efficacy. So if you want to think of big ones, Canadian story would be insulin. Insulin was actually an example of dog studies. So the discovery of insulin was in Toronto, and if you think of all the diabetics in the world that have benefited from the discovery of insulin, it's huge. It's got to be in the millions.
How closely regulated is the industry, if you will, for those conducting research on animals? How much oversight is there?
There's a huge amount of oversight. So, first of all, any university, most universities that are doing research, I would say all of them, basically get federal funding. So it's very expensive to do it. So this is things like the Canadian Institutes of Health Research, CHR, and similar federal agencies. And in order to be able to use those funds, universities have to set up animal care committees, which are then inspected by a federal agency called the CCAC, the Canadian Council on Animal Care. And so it's really highly regulated. And then in Ontario, there's also a layer of the provincial government with OMAFA, which has to enforce the Animals for Research Act.
What would the implications be, Arthur, if the province were to move in the direction that Premier Ford says it's going to move, and that is banning animal research?
Yeah, it's hard to sugarcoat that. I do think it will have a negative impact. I think what I said off the top. When we're trying to figure out how to treat a disease, it's a very long process. And it begins, maybe in test tubes with just looking at molecules, and then you move maybe to mice and to rats. And after many years of work, you might be ready to go into human, but before you can go into human, it has to go into a large animal species. Because rats and mice are probably about 600 million years of evolution away from human. And it's just too far to be certain of the safety and the efficacy. You need a species in between. That might be dog, that might be pig, something in between the rat and the mouse and the human. If we don't have that, it's hard to make that leap. It might not be ethical to go from a drug that you think works in mouse and rat and go directly into human. And so it probably is going to slow down research, or research will be taken up in other countries, potentially with unknown regulatory pathways. So I do think it will have a negative impact.
Are there no alternatives at this point?
There's much discussion about alternatives. The truth of the matter is that right now there are no alternatives to animal research for everything. In a few areas of research there are, and we use them. The best example would be probably some areas of toxicology and pharmacology. In other words, if you want to know if a drug is safe, we can cut down on at least the number of animals used for testing safety by doing certain things, using, in some cases, AI, in some cases using tissue culture methods. So that we have made some strides in this area. But I think it would be misleading to say that we are ready to get rid of animal testing. It's just not there yet, and probably won't be there yet for quite some time. But that doesn't mean that we can't slowly reduce animal use. I think all of my colleagues that do animal-based research would agree that they look forward to the day when there are good alternatives. And I think there is research in that area, and I am optimistic, but we're not there yet.
And I would suspect, Arthur, that this ethical question has been asked and debated many times before today and before the Premier brought it forward and made it a public issue again.
Of course. This is it's a very important ethical issue. And it's an issue that really has been discussed for a very long period of time. How humans treat their environment, how they treat their animals, how they treat each other. It's all part of an ethical lifestyle. And we do have to do it carefully. And I would say that we do fairly well. We have, as I mentioned, we go maybe from mouse to rat and then up in species. As you go up in species, you have to increase your ethical care, your ethical concern. And we do that. We do that by refining our techniques, by including veterinarians as we go up in higher species, by using less of those species. All those things are really important, and that's why we have such a highly regulated way of doing this, is because it has been debated, and we're always trying to fine-tune to make sure we're on the right side of things.
Arthur, I really appreciate you making time for our show today. Thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Arthur Brown is a professor in the Department of Anatomy and Cell Biology at Western University. He's also the chair of the Animal Care Committee there. And he says such research, that research being done on animals, remains vital to advancing medicine. The search for alternatives continues to exist, and many in the animal research field look forward to the day that these suitable alternatives do exist. However, right now, they do not. And so you wonder where you would be without the use of animals in research. Does that research get done elsewhere? What are the regulatory practices in those countries, etc.? I totally get, me, I am a pet lover, dogs in particular. It's a thorny issue, to say the least. Let's get right to the phones here from you. Stacy, good morning.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for taking my call.
Thanks for making it.
I have a lot of issues with what your speaker was talking about, Arthur Brown. He is not a credible person. In fact, he's involved with the animals, the dogs at St. Joe's that have not been released since a cardiac research study was stopped by Dr. Prato, who was doing inducing heart attacks on dogs for up to 3 hours. What he's saying is not true. There is a Dr. Charu Chandrasekhara, who is looking at alternate models to use of animals. Only problem there is her research doesn't get funded. The old archaic animal testing gets funded by our federal and provincial governments. And there's no way that they are treating these animals humanely. They get dogs from shelters where dogs have gone into the shelter system. Nobody's claimed them. They can take animals that were once pets and use them in research. There's no oversight over them. There's no animal cruelty charges that can be brought against them. They investigate themselves. And the research is definitely showing that animal research does not extrapolate to humans, not reliably, because there are differences in physiology, metabolism, genetics. Also, humans have comorbidities, which animal research does not capture that. So it's what he's saying there is just covering his own butt. And there have been protests at St. Joe's asking them to release the dogs that were pulled out of that cardiac research study, and we are getting stonewalled by St. Joseph's and government officials to say, why aren't these dogs released to a charity like Beagle Alliance that they can be rehomed? So Arthur Brown is not a credible person to speak to as an expert. If you wanted to talk about animal research, I would get Dr. Chara Chandrasekhara on your show.
Stacey, appreciate your input. Thanks very much for calling in today.
All right. You take care then.
You too. Bye now. And there you pretty much have both sides of the discussion. I might add just myself, again, as somebody who is an admitted animal lover, particularly dogs. But hey, if you are an animal, I love the habitat that you're living in, and I want to leave it undisturbed, and I want you to go on living that very best life that you have. I often have also been known to say it's pretty good being at the top of the food chain, isn't it? Because I'm a carnivore too. I do enjoy my cuts of meat. I've probably even worn clothes, leather for sure, that are made from animals or parts of animals. And this is where we're at as the human beings and the top of that food system. So we rely or we use animals for food and for fashion. When it comes to research, I would bet that those doing the research wished we didn't talk about this a whole lot, because every time we do, it raises these ethical questions. If we are alleviating human suffering, how much animal suffering is acceptable in the pursuit of that goal, ending human suffering? Like I said earlier, thorny would be the word I use to describe the issue. How do you feel about it? Should we go the Premier's way here and do away with animal testing in Ontario? Let me know your thoughts on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
I think it would be misleading to say that we are ready to get rid of animal testing. It's just not there yet, and probably won't be there yet for quite some time. But that doesn't mean that we can't slowly reduce animal use. I think all of my colleagues that do animal-based research would agree that they look forward to the day when there are good alternatives. And I think there is research in that area, and I am optimistic, but we're not there yet.
Arthur Brown is a professor in the Department of Anatomy and Cell Biology and the chair of the Animal Care Committee at Western University. He says testing on animals remains vital to advancing medicine. Stacey called prior to our commercial break and said there is nothing ethical currently going on when it comes to the treatment of animals in research for medical advances. Ontario Premier Doug Ford, who says he himself is an animal lover, has said he's going to ban the practice here in Ontario, conducting research on animals. How do you feel about the issue? Which I can't remember, honestly, the last time it has come up. I'm sure it has on this show in our just over 8 years together, and probably in the past when I was filling in as a host on various shows on this station. And every now and again, it gets raised again. And here we are. 519-570-2545. Star 570 and 1-800-570-5715. We can look at the advances that have been made that researchers will point to including using animal research, including vaccines that would treat polio and smallpox. There are therapies for HIV and organ transplants, treatments for cancer, diabetes, heart disease, as well as rare genetic disorders that all have relied upon in the past the research done on animals. It's also important to point out here that the industry is regulated. There is oversight. When Stacey shared her thoughts earlier, doesn't think there are a whole lot of teeth in that regulatory body where these researchers are essentially policing themselves and investigating themselves. I don't know enough about the industry itself to know that it's true. But I do know this. As much as we love our pets and animals probably in general, all of God's creatures and all of that, there is, I think, a general agreement that we value human life over animal life. If you were rushing back into a burning building where your child and or family pet is stuck inside, who is the first living being that you will attempt to save from that burning house? And that, of course, would be the family member, the child. We have in the past used animals, and we continue to use animals as a food source, as a fashion source, if you will, to make all manner of clothing that many of us have probably worn. And I know there are those who are so against such things that they have taken meat out of their diet, and they will argue against the use of animal skins, etc., in all manner of clothing. But the reality is, and has always been, that human life is valued above the lives of animals. And then I think about, just again, reflecting on Stacey's call before the break, and that animals that had been in shelters and had been pets in the past, family pets in the past, are turned over to these laboratories for research. I have long struggled with the number of animals that are in our shelters. Just think of the work that's being done by those in the animal care business, if you will, where, do you remember the big explosion of pets that were adopted during the pandemic when everybody was more people were working from home? They thought they had the time for this. Then all of a sudden you went back to quote unquote real life and you realized, boy, these pets are a lot of work. I don't think I have time for these pets. And so they just get surrendered. I mean, how much less ethical is that? Just giving up the pet back to a shelter so it's no longer your responsibility. And then if that former pet can be beneficial to advancements in medicine, wouldn't we welcome the opportunity for those advancements to be made using an animal that clearly nobody wanted anymore? And we've got shelters that are currently overrun. It is such, I'll use the word one more time, a thorny issue, because as an animal lover, I want to adopt all of the dogs who are currently up for adoption. I want to give them the very best home and very best life possible. But the reality is right now that we have far more pets than we have homes for them. We've got pet rescue organizations bringing pets from around the world where they're not able to get the necessary care or homes. And we bring them to Canada, to Ontario, to our homes right here in Waterloo Region. It's a wonderful thing to do. And yet at the same time, we're still struggling with the idea of also using those pets or former pets to advance medical science. Premier says he's going to ban it. Researchers say it's a vital part of advancing research. I'm going to get you to the 570 News Center for an update. Remember, today's Monday. That means at 11 this morning, This Week in Music History, David Drewe will be here with Drewe's Views at 11:30 this morning. And in the next 30 minutes, this is Hunger Awareness Month and the way that you can help feed kids in our community. This is the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. September is Hunger Action Month, and this happens to be the second Monday of September, but last Monday was the Labor Day holiday. So we usually do this on the first Monday of the month, but what better time than the present to have our friends from the Food Bank of Waterloo Region join us in studio. As I mentioned, Hunger Action Month and so much more to talk about with the CEO of the Food Bank of Waterloo Region, Kim Wilhelm, in studio with me. Good morning. Happy almost fall, Kim. I know it's like it's not on the calendar, but boy, it's starting to feel that way.
You know, I heard people chatting about, is it too early to get pumpkins out? And then I was at the store and I saw Christmas lights. Not ready for that yet, Mike.
No, there was a new plant brought to the front porch of our home on the weekend. And I said to my beloved, is that a fall plant? If you don't get them now, they're going to be gone, she said. Yeah. So here we are. Great to see you. And I wanted to check in on Full Bellies and Happy Hearts, because we had talked about that back in August when you were last here, and we know it was a big summer campaign. Can you tell us how it went?
I would be thrilled to. And I just have to check my notes because I want to get this number exactly right. And before I do, I just want to say thank you to the community. I've shared that this is my favorite campaign because it's the definition of community coming together, community helping community. And I am so pleased to say that our community raised $1,534,843 meals.
Let's round it up to 1.6 million. Come on. That's fantastic.
Yeah, so we surpassed our goal of 1.5 million, which I had a feeling we would, but it's so nice to see that number written down. So thank you.
When you go into campaigns like this, at a time like this, you're always wondering, will we, can we? And we did.
Yeah, that's exactly it, because we know how tough it is out in the world right now, Mike. The cost of living has never been higher, and our neighbors are truly struggling every day. Whether you're accessing food assistance or not, we are all living the effects of the cost of living.
So, Kim, as we approach the season of fall now, why is it so important for the community to stay engaged with the work that you're doing at the food bank?
Well, unfortunately, May, June, July, and I will find out about August probably later today, we had all record-breaking months at the Food Bank of Waterloo Region, which is telling us that the need for food assistance is not going away. It's telling us that people continue to struggle, and there's a lot of, I'll say, challenges in the world right now, a lot of uncertainty. But what we do know is that cost of living, overarchingly, is affecting everybody's ability to live and thrive. People are going back to school right now. There's additional expenses that parents have when it comes to buying school supplies. Winter's coming soon. People will have to, we can't seem to get sometimes even a full season out of a new snowsuit. But we want people to remain warm. And so there's extra expenses, whether it's heating our house or buying winter clothing that comes up in the fall and winter months. And so we just need to be vigilant and remember that there's people in our community that are struggling.
Now that we're into the month of September, Full Bellies, Happy Hearts, more than 1.5 million meals raised behind us. What does this month look like at the Food Bank of Waterloo Region? Well,
September, as you said off the top, is Hunger Action Month, and that's right across the country. Food banks, including the Food Bank of Waterloo Region and the Cambridge Food Bank, are working together to raise awareness for food insecurity right here in the region. We know that food insecurity happens not just in the month of September, but 365 days of the year. But September's a time that we're talking a little bit more about it. We're having a few more intentional conversations about it because we want people to know how serious food insecurity needs are right now in the country. Here at home, we're inviting the community to get involved, and whether that's learning more about food insecurity, urging elected officials to take action on poverty, volunteering your time, your skills, or donating food and funds. And this Friday, actually, at noon, I'd like to invite the community to stop by at a pop-up booth at Waterloo Town Square, where we're going to be talking more about this.
Where can people find more information, Kim?
As always, head over to our website, thefoodbank.ca, and there's lots of information that you'll find there about volunteering, donating, also about Hunger Action Month.
Okay, so that pop-up booth on Friday at Waterloo Public Square, great place to meet in person, learn a little bit more, and that website is a great resource, thefoodbank.ca. I'm almost hesitant to say the word fall or autumn, but we were talking about it just as we came on the air, Kim. The weather has certainly changed, and we know we're coming into that time of the year. And I know, and I think folks in this community have come to really expect the Oktoberfest food drive, the fall harvest, all of these different things. What does the season look like at the Food Bank of Waterloo Region?
Oh, you're right. We're here and we're right into the thick of it. And as always, the community is stepping up. There's a number of community events that are happening. Once again, we're partnering with our friends at Kitchener-Waterloo Oktoberfest. And the community will see us at several events, including the Kitchener Rangers game on October 3rd, Grill Fest October 10th, the Oktoberfest Parade, of course, on Thanksgiving Monday. We'll have volunteers collecting food and funds as part of the Uncle Hans food drive. And, you know, since 1995, parade goers have donated the equivalent of 1 million meals. So that's an important event that, you know, everyone can be a part of. And it's Thanksgiving Monday. It's a time to spend time with family, friends, and why not do it at the parade?
How is the team doing? How is the food bank doing generally at this time in our community where you're seeing the demand for, you know, food insecurity is at record highs, and yet you're continuing just to churn out and meet the need in our community? How are you able to do it?
We have an incredible group, and I can say that they are working hard. They know it's a busy time of year, and we were talking last week about just the joy that also happens at this time of year and how incredible it is to see the community come together, the community get involved, to hear the stories everywhere we go. And so that's what keeps it front and center for everybody, knowing that we are here to ensure that everyone has access to that basic need of food, and to ensure that they have the meals that they can on a daily basis.
Yeah, it strikes me as when we talk about these numbers, and you know, if you walk down your street and count 8 doors, it's likely that behind one of those 8 is somebody who's experiencing some level of food insecurity. And I think that's what we can, you know, that's the sort of thing we can really get behind as a community, helping our neighbor like that.
You know, Mike, hunger isn't caused by bad choices. It's a result of low income and gaps in the social safety net. And when we talk about counting those doors, we don't know what's happening behind those doors. And maybe the individual at school who is causing some problems, it could be they're hungry. We all know what happens when we get hungry, especially those of us who, you know, raise kids, and we see the impacts that food can make, good and bad. And so I think that it's just important that we all remember that food is a basic human right, not a fluff. Right?
We know we will see you out and about in the community all autumn long. We'll enjoy the last couple of weeks on the calendar of summer, but we know the community will be there for the work that you and the team are doing. Thanks for being here again today.
Thanks for having me.
Kim Wilhelm is the CEO of the Food Bank of Waterloo Region. Don't forget to check the website, thefoodbank.ca. Find out how you can support and watch for the team members in Waterloo Public Square this Friday at their pop-up. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. All right, from one food source to another, from the Food Bank of Waterloo Region, I'm pleased to be joined now by the Executive Director of Food for Kids Waterloo Region, Fawn Lang, joins me in studio. Nice to see you. Good morning.
Nice to see you, Mike. Good morning. Thanks for having us.
It's an absolute pleasure. The Us is 2 of my absolute favorites. And you know what? It's so great. I mean this sincerely. Jody O'Malley and Kirsty Herbstreet from Culinary Studio. I see you virtually so often, and here we are in person. Thanks for being here, both of you.
We're thrilled to be in person.
Oh, we need
Yes,
Devin. We
thank
need.
you.
Okay, we got Kirsty's mic. Devin, can we try Jody's mic again there? I think we lost her for. No, you're good, Jody. Don't move a set. Can we hear you now?
We're thrilled to be here.
Devin, I'm going to come in there and I'm going to have to do something to you, buddy. One more time now for Jody O'Malley of the Culinary Studio.
We're thrilled to be in person.
Dev, what are you doing to me? You are absolutely murdering me here. Okay, now look at this. It's on now. Now we got Dev. Are you okay on the other side of the glass, buddy? Okay, I'm just giving
He's
Devin
hungry.
a hard.
He's hungry.
He's hungry. I see the two of you, Jody and Kirsty, virtually so often because we love taking those classes that you offer through the Culinary Studio. And Jody, maybe can you give us some of the background on that? Because wasn't this almost sort of a happy pandemic accident of some kind?
Yeah, us being online.
Yes.
For sure it is. It was. We didn't know what to do, right? We weren't all together, and we're like, how can we come together? We went online, and we didn't look back. We can reach people across the region, across Canada, essentially. So anyone can participate in our classes, and we absolutely love what we do because, everyone can join.
Kirsty, can you tell me a little bit about that relationship? Because the two of you are like yin and yang when you're doing a class.
We were laughing on the way here because I was like, I can see you driving. Where I'm over here. She's like, oh my gosh, if someone could record our conversations. We talk about food all the time. We've been business partners for, I think, 15 years, maybe longer. And we just share a passion to eat great food, but more importantly, teach people how to make great food with local stuff every day in a timely manner and give them those tips and tricks that you might not necessarily read in a recipe.
How did the two of you get together and start doing this work?
I think it was like how many decades ago, there wasn't that many female chefs in the area. And Jody's like, hey, I hear you're going to cooking school. I'm like, yeah. And we just connected. Yeah. Yeah,
it's fantastic. It was a match made in culinary heaven. We truly enjoy all of those classes.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And we're here to talk specifically today about Thanks for Giving, an online cooking class fundraiser for food for kids. So, Fawn, let me bring it over to you. And I found it so interesting because Kim Wilhelm was just here from the Food Bank of Waterloo Region. And before she came in studio, the two of you were sitting outside having these, I'm sure, food-related, food security kinds of conversations. But tell us a little bit more about the work you do at Food for Kids.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for that. Food security, I like that you use that word because sometimes when we say insecurity, it's not the best way to look at it because the security piece is what we're each offering. The Food Bank, Food for Kids Waterloo Region, our friends at Nutrition for Learning, we all play a role in what that means to ensure that a child is fed. So at Food for Kids Waterloo Region, we're ensuring that on weekends and breaks outside of a classroom, that children are receiving the food that they deserve to thrive. So we're delivering right to their doorsteps on our holiday programming. So March break, traditional Christmas time, and 9 weeks of summer. And then during our weekend programming, we deliver right to the schools and we discreetly put it in the knapsack so that we can remove stigma and they're able to go home to having food because we don't know what happens behind closed doors.
That aspect of, filling something in that knapsack, making sure kids are fed when they're away from school really hit home for our family when we participated in one of those packing nights to get those snacks and those lunches off to schools and seeing some of the postal codes and realizing how close they were to where we lived really drove home the point for us that food security is sadly not something everybody has in the community.
Yes, that's a really good point. Like we used to see that you would have a saturated area and you would say, okay, I think that's a food scarce area, but it's across the board now. So there's 4,000 children in Waterloo Region and we're serving 1,350 right now. So there's so much more that needs to be done. So we're serving Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge, Wilmot, and Woolwich across the board 170 days of the year.
Okay. Fawn, can you tell us how Thanks for Giving, this online culinary fundraiser, came together?
Yes, well, it came from good friends, Kirsty and Jody, of course, who food is their life, right? They eat and breathe and sleep it. And at the same time, they're like, well, how can we do that much more good with what we're able to provide to the community and educate them and have them learn more? And it was just a beautiful partnership that really made sense because if we're going to give back, let's give to the most vulnerable. And I think all three of us really liked that coming together in the sense of food and comfort and who not better to experience to have a hot meal than a child who wouldn't necessarily receive that. So
So, Jody, can you walk us through what we're going to learn on September the 24th at your class?
We are going to do spaghetti and meatballs. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, I make a delicious spaghetti and meatballs.
That's what I was thinking. But actually, I don't.
Yeah, fair enough. Or your grandma taught you. But we always feel that there's something more to learn. And there is something more to learn in this class. We're going to do something that the kids love, that your kids love. So with this charity, your whole family can be involved. Everyone's in the kitchen, everyone's making this, and then they're going to learn through the class where the fundraiser is going towards, and it's going to be a delicious night.
Absolutely. Fun and delicious and educational.
Yeah, and this is, like, Kirsty, what jumps out at me is, as Jody alludes to, this is one of your traditional standard dishes. A lot of college students are going to be able to put together, some sauce on some pasta, but there's more. It's the meaning behind it, I think, is what we're getting 100%, at here.
And getting the whole family involved. This is, honest to God, the easiest fundraiser you could do. It's not a big time commitment. When you got to cook, I always feel you have to cook dinner anyways. Your registration fee is going to cook your dinner, help you cook your dinner, right? You might have a box of pasta and some sauce on hand. Great. We provide you with a list of ingredients, or we can provide them as well. You can get your family involved, and then, a part of that proceed goes directly to help us put together a hot spaghetti dinner for our Food for Kids recipients on Thanksgiving weekend.
You're right about us picking up the ingredients. That's the way we've enjoyed our culinary studio classes in the past. You make it so easy. Everything's right there. It's portioned. You can do that as part of this fundraiser, or just sign up for the class and pick up the ingredients yourself. Where can we learn more? Where can we get people signed up?
So, culinarystudio.ca, you're going to find us there. You're going to find that, live online cooking class registration link right there. The great thing is, too, Mike, we are holding it on September 24th, but we also record our classes. So you can sign up, you can cook along live with us, or you can do the recording on your own time. And I know, as Fawn was saying earlier, there's a whole lot of other ways you can help us bring this spaghetti dinner together for Thanksgiving as well. So, yeah.
The culinarystudio.ca. This class is happening 2 weeks this Wednesday, September the 24th. Register online, theculinarystudio.ca. Fawn, what does a partnership like this mean to Food for Kids Waterloo Region?
It means everything. So when community comes together, especially in something like this, where you're able to provide a basic human need through something loving and educational, we couldn't ask for anything more. It's awareness. It's giving back in the right way while still enjoying and having fun with your own family and situation, and you're just doing something good with it. So we're very, very grateful for the two of you and all our supporters and yourself for even talking about this today, right? Everyone has a voice, and when they do that for a purposeful of something good for a child, it's all we could ask for. So thank you.
We've done these cooking classes before as date nights, because they're so much fun. They really are. And then you end up with a meal that you can enjoy afterwards. This has got the fundraising component attached, so we're more than happy to be a part of it. And Jody, you've seen me on these classes before. I am just the pretty face. Like, I just hang out, try to get stuff. I'm not even a sous chef. I just fetch things. But what makes spaghetti and meatballs? What is it about that traditional meal?
No one's going to complain.
Right.
Everyone's going to love it. You're not going to get someone that's like, I don't want to eat that tonight. Spaghetti and meatball night, everyone is thrilled to have it. So that's why we chose something like that. And all those little hands can roll up those meatballs. If you've got little kids and they have fun rolling up those meatballs, and it's a delicious meal. Caesar salad as well is part of this meal. It's delicious, and no one will complain about having that for dinner.
I'm going to make it my mission to roll some of those meatballs for this class. Watch me. I'll be on there.
I can't wait.
That's the best part. Like, join the class just to watch Mike, what he does and doesn't do, and I'll call him out.
It is so true. I'll put my screen on big, and you'll be able to see all of that, all what I don't do. But here's a helpful hint, too, kids. Leftover pasta is my favorite. Like, I actually like it. Sometimes I've made it and just put it in the fridge for the next day.
Wow. Yes.
Yeah, I like it even better.
Hot tips from Mike.
Hot
okay.
tips.
It tastes better the next day.
I think so, too. Take the tips from Jody O'Malley and Kirsty Herbstreet from the Culinary Studio. They're the experts. theculinarystudio.ca. It's the Thanks for Giving Food for Kids online cooking class fundraiser on September the 24th. 2 Wednesdays from this coming. Fawn Lang, Executive Director, Food for Kids, Waterloo Region. Thank you all for being here.
Oh, our pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to see you on the 24th doing nothing, just like every day here on the show.
Making meatballs.
Making meatballs. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Let's dance in style, let's dance for a while. Heaven can wait, we're only watching the skies. Hoping for the best, but expecting the worst. Are you gonna drop the bomb or not? Let us die young or let us live forever. We don't have the power, but we never say never. Sitting in a sandpit, life is a short trip. The music's for the sad man. Can you imagine when the space is won? Turn our golden faces into the sun. Praising our leaders, we're getting in tune. The music's played by the madman. Forever young, I want to be forever young.
I mean, which Forever Young song do you like better? This one from Alphaville or the late 80s tune by Rod Stewart, also called Forever Young? There were probably others. Boy, do I like this one from Alphaville, though, and we use it to start this week in music history. You'll understand more about why as we get into our conversations this week with Brian Allison, who is our good friend and musicologist. I also remind you that he has a Facebook page by the same name, This Week in Music History, where you can read all about that very thing, This Week in Music History. Brian, good morning, my friend.
Hi, Mike.
You remember, does this make you feel forever young? You and I are of the same vintage, but thinking back in these musical memories, I feel a little bit younger every week, I think.
Sometimes I feel a little older, though. when I hear, Mick Jagger is 80-some-odd years old, then I feel old.
That's a very good point by you. Okay, I want to go back first to this week in 1968 and a performance of a great Beatles song on UK television. This song, I remember, I fell in love with it during their Live at Nebworth concert. It was McCartney, actually, that was just live at Nebworth. And when he did this tune, I absolutely fell in love with it. But the Beatles played it on TV this week in 1968.
Just an epic song. And yes, they performed on the Frost on Sunday morning show to an invited audience, an invited live audience. So David Frost, of course, everybody knows he hosted several shows in the UK, and he was good friends of the Beatles. So they decided to debut their brand new single on his show, which turned out to be a sort of an epic performance that everybody knows of nowadays. And it was the first single from the Beatles' new record label, Apple Records, which they had just started, and it was also one of the longest at the time songs to chart on the charts. It had over 7 minutes in length. It was the longest single to ever top the British charts, and it spent 9 weeks at number one in the United States. And again, the longest run at the top of the charts for a Beatles single. So impressive song for the Beatles, and some interesting trivia that goes along with it. What was the longest song to top the Billboard 100 chart?
So
besides the Beatles.
Even longer than Hey Jude? I'm going to guess Stairway to Heaven.
No, actually, and that was been one of my first guesses too, because that one always seems, incredibly long once you've added that solo at the end.
Yeah.
To hit number one on the American charts, American Pie, actually, in its full version by Don McLean, parts 1 and 2, clocked in at 8 minutes 37 seconds in its full length, and it hit number one for 4 weeks in January of 1972. That record was broken in 2021 by none other than Taylor Swift.
Oh my goodness!
She started with a song called All Too Well, which clocked in at an astounding 10 minutes and 13 seconds, and it hit number one.
There you go. It all started on This Week in Music History back in 1968 with Hey Jude. All right, let's stay in the 60s. This week in 1965, the Rolling Stones had a number one.
They did, with probably their best-known song, Satisfaction, which has a great history. So Keith Richards claims that he wrote this song virtually in his sleep. So he was sleeping in a hotel room in Florida one night while the band was on tour in the U.S., and he woke up and started playing this riff. And he had a recording device next to his bed. Hit the record button, played this little riff. Dun, 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 dun. Everybody knows the famous opening riff for a couple of minutes, and then fell back to sleep. And he says on the tape you can actually hear him playing that riff on an acoustic guitar, then dropping the guitar, and then about 40 minutes of snoring. True story, according to Keith. So one of the Stones' most famous songs, which hit number one on September 9th, 1965, Keith Richards virtually wrote that riff in his sleep. Pretty impressive.
It is. Listen, when you're the Rolling Stones, you can write riffs in your sleep. There you go. What I wouldn't have given to have been alive in 1969 for the Toronto Rock and Roll Revival concert.
This is almost one of my favorite stories in music history. I love this story because it basically defined an artist. It took an artist from nobody to somebody virtually overnight. So the story is 1969, the Toronto Rock and Roll Festival, which took place at Varsity Stadium, had a lineup, and think of this lineup: John Lennon, Chuck Berry, The Doors, Bo Diddley, and this opening band, not a guy, a band called Alice Cooper, were invited to play. So during the band set, Alice Cooper were famous for ripping open a couple of feather pillows. They had CO2 cartridges, and they would basically cover the whole venue with feathers. Fun gag. But somebody during the set threw a live chicken onto the stage. Don't know how the chicken got into the show, but this happened. It's been caught on film. You can watch it. Alice, being from Detroit, and he's been interviewed about this hundreds of times, said, I'm from Detroit. I've never been on a farm. It's a bird. It's got wings. It'll fly. I tossed it back towards the crowd. The crowd pulled the chicken to pieces and threw all the chicken pieces back onto the stage. The next day in the press says that Alice, or as he was known at the time, Vincent Fernier, he hadn't yet adopted the whole name of Alice Cooper. That was the band name. The press says that the lead singer sacrificed the chicken on stage and drank its blood, which didn't happen. But Alice gets a call the next day from Frank Zappa, who was producing their first record, which had just been released. And he said to Alice, "Did you do that to the chicken?" And Alice said, "No, I didn't do that." And he goes, "Well, don't tell anybody, because this is the kind of story that makes an artist."
Bingo.
And there you go. Thus began the legend of Alice Cooper, and they just took off from there.
September 13th, 1969, the Toronto Rock and Roll Revival, and the story that wasn't true but made a legend out of Alice Cooper. Gotta love it.
Awesome story. And it happened right here close to us in Toronto, which is even cooler.
Brian Allison is our good friend and musicologist who joins us every Monday morning at this time for This Week in Music History. Don't forget to check out the Facebook page of the same name. This Week in Music History, read all about it and hear more of the stories here. We're going to jump out of the 60s after three stories from there into the 1980s and two big 80s artists, one with their first number one and another who went one better with top 10 hits and a number one album. That's coming up as we continue This Week in Music History on the Mike Farwell Show this morning. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. No, not this artist from the 1980s, but fitting that we play another 80s artist. Well, I mean, Tom Petty spanned several decades, but perhaps his biggest albums came in the 1980s. And I had said just before that commercial timeout that as we continue This Week in Music History with our good friend and musicologist Brian Allison, we're going to get into the 80s and a couple of big artists then. One of them, Brian, on This Week in 1988, scored their first U.S. number one hit.
They did, and another song that came very much by accident, just like the story we were talking about Keith Richards earlier. So Guns N' Roses were recording some songs for an album, for their debut album, and they were rehearsals, and Slash was noodling around on the guitar and came up with, sort of just a circus-style melody, as he called it, and he was actually trying to get their drummer, Steven Adler, to crack up. And he was playing this sort of riff. And Izzy Stradlin, who I've always thought was the brains and the songwriting ability behind Guns N' Roses, said, hold on a second, play that again. So Slash played the same riff again. He added a rhythm part over top of it. Duff McKagan comes in with a bass line. They said, Axel, you got any lyrics we could add to this? And within about a half an hour, they had Sweet Child of Mine. And, of course, the song went to number one, probably the song that everybody remembers Guns N' Roses best for, and it hit number one September 10th, 1988. So pretty impressive that they were just able to kind of come up with that on the whim. Great trivia for that song. What 50s music icon's daughter were the lyrics to Sweet Child of Mine written about?
If I'm thinking of a 50s icon, I'll go with Chuck Berry.
Well, same, right? You got the right era for sure.
Yeah.
But the song was actually written for Dawn Everly's daughter, Erin Everly, who was Axl Rose's girlfriend at the time the song was written. And they didn't stay together, but he claims that he wrote the lyrics to Sweet Child of Mine about Erin Everly, who was his girlfriend. So that was Dawn Everly's daughter. So there you go.
I love it. Excellent piece of trivia again. Okay, let's go back to, I mean, as if getting your first number one isn't a big enough deal for Guns N' Roses. This guy not only had 2 songs in the top 10, but the number one album at the same time on This Week in 1982.
Right, and that had never been done to that point. And so you've got September 11th, 1982, John, as he was known, Cougar Mellencamp at the time, became the only male artist in history to simultaneously have 2 singles in the U.S. top 10. So he had Jack and Diane, which landed at number 4, and Hurt So Good, which landed at number 8. At the same time, his album, American Fool, maintained the top spot, number one album, for 9 weeks. Nobody has ever done that before. And that's a remarkable record when you think about it, because this is the era of Michael Jackson's Thriller. And that album, where virtually every song was a single, he didn't have 2 in the top 10 and the number one album at any one point. So John Mellencamp managed to beat Michael Jackson with his album, which was a pretty impressive record in 1982.
Pretty good feat for sure. And you know, when you mention John Cougar Mellencamp, I just can't help but think of the various iterations of, right? He was John Cougar first, then he was John Cougar Mellencamp, and I'm pretty sure now he just goes by Mellencamp, doesn't he? John Mellencamp?
So actually, he was Johnny Cougar.
Johnny Cougar.
That was his first album title, Johnny Cougar. Then he went to John Cougar, plain John Cougar. Then he went to John Cougar Mellencamp. Then he dropped the Cougar altogether and went to John Mellencamp. So now he is just John Mellencamp, and has been probably for the majority of his career now.
Okay, we started our segment today with Alphaville's Forever Young, and that's got to be connected to This Week in Music History 2007.
Yeah, so a study came out, very cool study I thought was very telling, revealed that rock stars were twice as likely to die early as the rest of us, with the average age of death of a rock star noted to be considerably lower than the average citizen. So research said that the problem was so bad that they considered that the industry should be labeled a high-risk profession. So I wanted to kind of test this theory. So I just took a sample group. I took this week, September 7th to September 13th, and I looked at all the rock stars who had died. There were 21 of them in total. The average age of death for this sample group, 65 years old. So well below the average lifespan of a human being, which is 74 years old. The youngest this week was Tupac Shakur, who died at 25 years old. And the oldest was Roger Whittaker, who died at 87 years old. Both died on September 13th, 1996 and 2023, respectively. So there you go. Being a rock star, it's a great life, I'm sure, but might put you in an early grave statistically.
Super interesting. And I can't help but think, though, high-risk profession. Do you think they increase that risk themselves with all of the drugs and the booze and everything else that comes with rock and roll?
Well, yeah, for sure. I mean, there's definitely a large portion of musicians who have died by drug overdose, alcohol poisoning, all those things, death by misadventure, lots of accidents, lots of car accidents, lots of suicides too. Lots of them have died by their own hands. So there's kind of a good cross section. I would wager that a good majority of those, if you charted, were not by natural causes. A good proportion of them are, like you say, self-imposed.
Speaking of that rock and roll lifestyle, I ran into a friend I hadn't seen in many, many years at an event. I think it was even last summer. So we see each other so infrequently, but we're both big Rush fans. And we got talking about Geddy Lee's book, My Effin' Life, and how I was thoroughly enjoying it at the time. And my friend said to me, I enjoyed it, but I was kind of disappointed because I thought these guys from Toronto were the clean, good living rock and rollers. And he was disappointed to find out that, hey, even Rush dabbled in those elements of the rock and roll lifestyle with drugs, etc. And I bring that up by way of remembering the great, in my opinion, the greatest ever to sit behind a kit, Neil Peart, who would have turned 73 this week.
He was the greatest drummer of all time.
Right?
Hands down,
Yeah.
far ahead of anybody else. You cannot put anybody in front of his skill and his creativity and what he was able to do behind the drum kit. I'm a drummer myself. I just look at stuff that Neil did and just shake my head thinking, I don't even know how he's doing what he's doing right now. So it was an incredible artist. And yeah, he would have turned 73 on September the 12th. So definitely we miss Neil and we miss Rush. And yeah, I've heard stories of Rush from different camps. I've heard some people who have toured with them said, God, these guys from Canada, they hit the stage and they're wild and then they go back to their hotel rooms and read books. And then other people would say, well, yeah, but they did dabble in a little bit of partying and a little drinking and a little drugs here and there. But I think where Rush was more subtle about it, they weren't out there like Ozzy wearing it on their sleeve sort of thing. They did it quietly.
Yeah, it's a great point. And Geddy pulled no punches. It certainly wasn't Ozzy Osbourne-esque, but they did sample, shall we say, as they went through their careers. So sure enough, it had to be available to them. So
I'm not sure how you would go through a career from basically the late 60s until, just a few years ago and not have had some experiences within the drug culture. I mean, it's just going to happen when you're living in that particular world.
I would agree completely. As always, Brian, a great little trip down a musical memory lane. Thanks for this again today.
Always a pleasure, Mike.
Brian Allison is a musicologist. He joins us every Monday morning for a look at this week in music history. And there's a Facebook page of the same name I will remind you of. This Week in Music History. Look it up and read all about it. Just get your fill of music history from this week, September the 7th through the 13th. One of the other things that actually comes up this Friday, which is when we will remember Neil Peart. That would have been his birthday. Would have turned 73, having been born in 1952. On September the 12th, 1966, the first episode of The Monkees TV show aired in the U.S., and it ran for a total of 58 episodes. My most vivid memories of the Monkees were from their appearances on The Brady Bunch. At least one. Was it just Davy Jones that showed up on The Brady Bunch? Anyway, I didn't know much. That was a little bit before my time. I'm born in 71, so a little too early to really engage with the Monkees or even the Beatles, quite frankly. And then when I picked up my musical tastes, I went back to the 70s an awful lot, but more for the rock and roll, as I would call it, than the poppier sounds that I heard from the Beatles and the Monkees. Although I've really come to appreciate the Beatles' place in rock and roll more generally. But I appreciated more of the complex sounds coming from Zeppelin and Floyd and so many others. And one of the other things I'll always remember about the Monkees, and I think I might have shared this story with you before, but Bob Segarini, what did they call him? Ice. Shame on me for forgetting. Iceman? Terrible I'm forgetting that. Anyway, legendary radio announcer, and had kind of a comeback on rock radio in Toronto in the 90s, early 2000s, and told the story of living across the street from one of the Monkees, and this was in LA. And this particular member of the band was building a little helicopter in his garage. He thought this was fascinating. And I remember the story. I wish I could remember the exact characters involved. But just, there you are living across the street from one of the Monkees. And what's he doing on a Saturday afternoon? Putting together a little helicopter in his garage. Heaven forbid he thinks he's going to fly it after the fact. But there you go. You make a lot of money in music and you spend it on all kinds of toys, including helicopters that you can assemble in your own garage. Gosh, it's driving me. If you knew Bob Segurinis, was it the Ice? Is that what he called himself? The Iceman? I feel like I'm wrong on that, but he was a great announcer. I used to like listening to him in the evenings on rock radio many a decade ago. I'm getting old. It's starting to slip through the cracks for me. We do This Week in Music History at 11 every Monday morning. And then at 11:30 every Monday morning, David Drewe joins us for Drew's Views. And David agrees with one of you's. After you called on Friday, you'll find out about what as we get to Drew's Views next on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? I haven't seen hide nor shaggy head of that boy in 4 years. But you'd know him if you met him. Played harmonica like the cat lost his balls. Yep, Crazy Dave. Had a toothy smile as big as my hand. Always chewed on a toothpick or a long blade of grass, drank from the bottle, rolled the worst cigarettes, was impervious to insect bites. It's one of the best damn tree-planting highballers east of Prince George.
There's a lot east of Prince George, just for the record. David Drewe, that was not written about him by Scott Wicken, but it's an excellent spoken word introduction to our friend who owns negotiating change, government relations, stakeholder engagement strategies, and also spent considerable time in the halls of the highest political office in the land, working for the Conservatives.
Sorry for interrupting, Mike, but I want to take this opportunity and this powerful platform you have to announce that I'm flipping a new page in my life. I am changing my name to David Drewe, and I am going to be running for
King of Canada.
Queen of Canada. Justin Trudeau was in office for 10 years. You can't tell me we can't have a male Queen of Canada.
Also fair. I'm sorry I stepped on that. I should have allowed the Queen of Canada to come out. I was see how sexist I am, David Drewe?
Yes, you should go to the penalty box for 2 minutes and feel shame.
I will go to the penalty box and feel shame while I listen to you wax poetic about the caller on this show that you agreed with. Now, be careful.
Oh, even before we get there, I have one more thing to say. And this is actually a true story, which is even funnier than me running for Queen of Canada.
Okay. I don't know how that's possible, but try me.
I can't say the whole quote on the air, but Trump's Treasury Secretary said to Trump's housing finance chief at a dinner, I'm going to punch you in your F-blanking face. And apparently, this is the third time he has threatened violence on another member of Trump's cabinet.
Well, listen. If anybody saw, and I am absolutely profiling here, so again, I'm sexist and now I'm going to profile. If anybody saw these thugs when they started walking, they had nice suits on, but they could have passed for the Corleone family back in the 60s. Like, come on with your coming on here. Yeah.
Anyway,
okay.
Life is a cartoon, especially mine.
Please do explain how, and remember the thin ice that you are on when you decide, good sir, that you are agreeing with one of the callers to this show.
Well, yeah, I wish I could remember the caller's name, but he called in, was saying, the first call he'd make if he defended his house in self-defense would be to a lawyer. And you kind of poo-pooed him and la-di-da'd it away as if that was such a minor concern. And the way you ended it was, I'm not going to go to jail. And I agree with you. You would not go to jail. But you would be able to afford your retirement if you spoke to the lawyer first. You wouldn't be mortgaging your house to pay for all the ongoing legal fees just because you said something a bit oopsie at the beginning of it. Matt Gurney did a crazy interview with a lawyer for about a half hour, and this lawyer specializes in self-defense, and his basic point was, yeah, if it was me, I would be calling a lawyer first as a lawyer, because there's simply no way any lawyer can give you advice in advance as to how this is going to play out. Yeah, you may, likely be found not guilty, but what is it going to cost you to get to that point? And that is why I would be talking to a lawyer first, not because I'm worried about being found guilty, but I don't want 2 years of my life being sucked away with, is David a murderer?
It's funny you bring this up, David, because believe it or not, there is a chamber of sober second thought on this program, much like the Senate. And that chamber is when I'm not at the radio station outside of regular working hours. And I, too, reflected on that phone call and my dismissive attitude towards it because I was thinking, I took it quite literally, this caller, and I'm thinking of his house being invaded. The threat is real. It's in his face, and he's going to pick up the phone, and instead of 911, he's going to call 911 lawyer. And I thought, don't be silly. But when I thought about it, you're right. He was right. You want to, because anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. So if the police come charging in and you're holding the bloody knife and you say, I stabbed this guy because he broke in my house, like, think of the incriminating nature of those words. So good advice by the caller, good recognition by you.
Well, not also just the idea of that, but there are 3 different musts that you must be reasonable on, and those are interpreted through 7 different lenses. Like, it's a complicated thing. And if you used a weapon, yeah, you should call a lawyer first, because that is incredibly hard to justify through all of these lenses.
Glad we could talk about this a little bit further. Let's talk a little bit further about Canada's electric vehicle mandate. We hardly knew ye. Okay, we knew it very well, but it's at least temporarily paused or pushed out by another year here.
Yeah, it's kind of like how the government kept pausing on whether they were going to let Huawei into our phone systems or not. You know, the waiting forever on a decision can also just be a decision of, what's the word I'm looking for? What's the opposite of momentum? Inertia.
I like it.
We don't have the infrastructure in place to meet this goal. We just simply, there's not enough charging stations. There's not enough power on the grid for all of these charging stations. And I know some of your callers will say, well, actually, we're a battery for the grid. And, you know, they can take power out of my car when we need it badly enough. And it's like, okay, I kind of get that, but no, we need general draw for every day, not for emergencies. And we don't have that. And we don't have enough electric cars on the market. And the way the Trudeau policy ended up working was Canadian car makers were just basically writing checks to Elon Musk because Tesla doesn't make anything but electric cars. So all of these Canadian companies who weren't making enough or couldn't sell enough were writing checks to Elon bloody Musk. So yeah, federal government, Mark Carney's like, yeah, we're pausing on this. No word on what we're going to be doing over the long term if we're still committed to the long-term 2035 goal. But in the meantime, Canadian car makers don't have to send Tesla checks anymore.
What I find so interesting about this is how quickly we have taken another step away from the former regime here in Ottawa. I mean, the consumer carbon tax was set to zero virtually immediately. Now the EV mandate, which many were upset about, has been paused. I say likely to be canceled, but we shall see. But how much different, or it makes me wonder what in HE double hockey sticks was going on under Justin Trudeau anyway, because many of these same MPs were there when Trudeau said, let's have this mandate. So do you just nod and follow along, party line stuff?
Sorry, I'm not going to let you get away with saying that.
Why?
They were shaming people who disagreed with them. And now they're shaming people who disagree with their previous position. Like, there's a lack of shame in this flip-flop for all of them except Carney. How do you spell lickspittle? Can I say that one on the air?
I think you can.
Woohoo.
Lickspittle.
Lickspittle.
Has Ontario Premier Doug Ford turned against Prime Minister Carney?
I don't want to say yes, because these seem to be very light punches so far. And there was 2 things. There was the Doug Ford being a little bit grouchy about his tunnel under the 401. God bless me for saying that. Not making the major project list that he's seen. And so it's like, yeah.
Can you just explain to me in any way how 2 lanes below the 401 are somehow going to relieve congestion in the 16 lanes above it or on it?
Okay, so this was a conversation my better half and I were having on the deck yesterday as we were running through what the topics might be. And she's like, it's stupid it won't work and it's stupid. And I'm like, yeah, see, that's just it. Like, I can buy into the idea of this being of national interest to solve Canada's largest city and largest economic hubs gridlock issues. But this is not it. And I'm with you. This is just but I just wonder if this is the thing he can, pardon me, I really don't understand what's going on with that tunnel under. I really don't. But more significantly, last week, Doug Ford was questioning whether Mark Carney had his elbows up anymore and was encouraging to start throwing a few more punches. And, that's twice in 2 weeks that Doug Ford has thrown shade at Mark Carney. And to my recollection, that's the first 2 times since Mark Carney was elected that Doug Ford has been throwing shade his way. And I have no idea what this means, if anything.
Honeymoon's over.
Well, no, because even now, I still don't picture either of these comments being ire-raising for the federal Liberals. It's just sort of like, okay, but, Danielle Smith has said such worse things about the federal government and is still considered friendly. It's the best relationship Alberta and the federal government have had in, let's say, a decade. David Eby's the interesting one, where he's going to continue the EV mandate in British Columbia despite the feds. And yeah, I guess we'll get later to another point where they're off. But yeah, David Eby's the interesting one because he has been, to my recollection, the least friendly premier to Mark Carney in the country. He's the one who is most often offside with the Prime Minister and his colleagues. And I don't know what that means either. But I do find it very, very interesting that BC is going its own way in unpredictable directions, let's say.
That premier in British Columbia is a former resident of the fine city of Kitchener, David Eby. He leads an NDP government provincially in British Columbia, and maybe, just maybe, he can be aligned with Pierre Poilievre against Mark Carney in some ways. We'll talk about that and trade supports as well as Drewe's Views continues on the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Monday mornings, 11:30, we are joined by David Drewe, former Conservative Party staffer, now the owner-operator at Negotiating Change, Government Relations and Stakeholder Engagement Strategies, and soon to be running for Queen of Canada, the royal position he so richly deserves. Let's talk a little more, David, about another David, this one Eby, the premier, the NDP premier of British Columbia, who I heard my colleague Rob Snow refer to last week as a progressive. And I think that Rob was saying that simply because NDP would make one think that its leadership and perhaps the makeup of the party is entirely progressive. But the David Eby I know from this very city of Kitchener was much more of a centrist than a progressive, in my opinion. You heard even when he first took office, the way he talked about getting tough on crime was far from an NDP position, in my estimation. But nonetheless,
he ran the BC Civil Liberties Association.
He did.
Before entering politics. And, that brings you an interesting brand of progressivism.
Okay.
They are the ones who defend some odious people on the principles of rights. And sometimes the pendulum, mostly it swings towards progressive causes, I've got to say that. But, they are the defend your right to say it, whether or not we agree with you groups. So he can be an interesting person. He's definitely not a simple person to predict. He is bright, and he doesn't like dumbing down issues.
I think that's a great way to put it, the unpredictable nature for sure, because I was quite taken aback too when he started talking about and supported the idea of mandatory treatment. If you are on the streets and you are clearly addicted to some sort of substance, then we will send you to treatment, whether you want to go or not. And that, again, strikes me as very anti-progressive, or the opposite of.
What is progressive in this case? Is it getting somebody to free health care, or is it allowing them the freedom?
I get you.
You know what I mean? Like, what is I have this struggle myself because I call myself a small C conservative, but I don't really feel much of myself in the Conservative Party of Canada or the Progressive Conservatives of Ontario right now. I'm an ideologue. My ideals have not changed just because the parties have adapted. So I can understand progressives having the same thing. It's like, how do you cut that pie? What is a progressive? Is it the social side? Is it the fiscal side? I don't know. But David Eby and Pierre Poilievre are now agreeing that we need to end the temporary foreign worker program. And that is the most interesting guess again. What is the progressive thing here? And in this case, I think Pierre Poilievre is being the progressive. This is standing up for, in a stupid, simplistic way, which is I can't figure out where DVD is coming from on this, but in a very simplistic way to say we're going to solve something, and it's, end of this. I can see where Pierre is coming from. It sounds like you are creating jobs for Canadian workers that are to be stolen foreigners, and I think in a lot of cases they are. But there's a baby bathwater thing. I don't think you kill the program. I think you get it right. And he's kind of said we're going to do that in the cases of farms. He's not going to cheese off those rural voters. But, the downtown Toronto Tim Hortons, you're probably in a lot of trouble.
I think that's the perfect way to put it. We have to get it right, and or perhaps even right-size the program, if I can use that in our efforts to get the program right.
Bingo.
Mark Carney emerged last week from a 2-day retreat in Toronto with his cabinet, and some supports for trade-battered industry were announced. One surprises you, others, give you an overwhelming sense of pessimism?
Well, I think we should get a sense of pessimism before I get to what surprises me, because none of these are short-term measures. We're talking about extending EI before the applications have even really started flowing in for it. We're starting to see job losses, but before we even see the surge that we know is coming, we're talking about extending EI. $1 billion for reskilling workers because it's not going to be worth keeping them in. Why are you reskilling workers if the jobs are coming back? They're not. That is what you hear about when you hear reskilling. So yeah, these plans are not any sign from the federal government that we are getting close to a trade agreement with Donald Trump. Or maybe we are, and some of these jobs aren't coming back. We always said we'd get the best deal possible, but...
Interesting reading of the tea leaves.
Yeah. Now, what surprises me? There's a $5 billion strategic response fund. And so that's going to be to prop up industries, help them modernize, whatever. It's vaguely defined. It's a slush fund. Not that that's always a bad thing. Hopefully there's going to be more terms coming down. That's not what surprises me. Liberals with slush funds never surprises me. And it kind of makes sense that, if you're going to give this thing to industry to adapt, who's going to be giving it out? It makes sense that it's the Minister of Industry. But I'm sorry, if I'm Mark Carney, I am not putting my strategic response fund in Melanie Joly's hands. She has not touched anything and made it succeed. She's had a few giant blunders. She's mostly well known for when Russia invaded Ukraine, having some of her staff attending a garden party at the Russian embassy. And it was because she just wasn't paying attention to the details to notice that this was in the paperwork. Yeah, I don't want her having $5 billion of slush funds. I want somebody who, has a pencil in their hand and bad eyesight from squinting at the numbers all through the night. I want a details person on $5 billion slush fund. And I'm sorry, $5 billion. But let's just call it a super cluster.
I love, great reference. I love how we throw around the billions these days. Billions here, billions plural there. The billions that are attached to our deficit when we ever get that budget in the fall. Oh my goodness gracious. Anyway, we got to leave it there. Super clusters for the win, Dave. We were going to have some super clusters right here in the region, weren't we?
We do.
Do we?
Yeah, they're everywhere.
Okay.
They don't mean anything.
David Drewe is the owner of Negotiating Change.
And future Queen of Canada.
Future Queen of Canada. Joins us every Monday morning, 11:30 for Drew's Views here on the Mike Farwell Show. Your views in rant and or rave form are coming up. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Take out the papers and the trash, or you don't get no spending cash. If you don't scrub that kitchen floor, you ain't gonna rock and roll no more. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
Just finish cleaning up your room. Let's see that dust fly with that broom. Get all that garbage out of sight, or you don't go out Friday night. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
On Mondays, your Talkback Hour is for your rants and or raves. Rant because something's got you upset. Rave because you're smiling ear to ding-dang ear on this Monday afternoon. We take your rants or raves at 519-570-2545, star 570, or 1-800-570-5715. When we started the show today, we got a surprise, spontaneous, random, and beautiful phone call from the mayor of Waterloo, Dorothy McCabe. And immediately following that, we had an interview scheduled with Kitchener Mayor Barry Verbanovic. And I told you then that we bring you only the biggest and best guests on this show, and that you're always welcome to call, whether you're a mayor or not. And I was hoping to hear from this guy at some point today. Our good friend Mayor Jake is with us on Rant or Rave. Your worship, good afternoon.
Mike, how are you now?
I'm good, and you?
Not so bad, thanks. So I got a rant for you.
All right.
I think Sean Fraser is the biggest wimp that's ever been produced. The guy failed as housing minister, and he's going to fail as justice minister. And you're telling me I can't protect my family, and you're saying it's the Wild West. And shame on the York Regional Police. No, they should do what they do best, is make little cute TikTok videos and send those out. There's 4 shootings over the weekend. I think also in Hamilton, this gentleman's telling he needs to take his cameras down. The bylaw is telling him, you know what, how about we focus on the crime and stop worrying about the government shortfalls?
Mayor Jake, I appreciate the call and the rant. I know where you're coming from when you talk about York Region and its police chief, who had said in a very controversial clip that's now been circulating that the best response to a home invasion is to comply with the invaders. I have heard him in a follow-up interview where he clarified some of that language. And look, I get it. And, on the issue, I actually saved this from my weekend paper because I'm shaking my head. And I know I brought this up with you last week, but I'm honestly trying to put my finger on what it is here that is the problem currently. Because from just one section within 2 pages of the same weekend newspaper that I was reading, I'm sure you heard of the stabbing out west that originated on a First Nations reserve, and the suspect in that who killed his sister just so happened to be out on bail at the time of the stabbing spree. That was one story. I turned the page in my newspaper on the weekend and I read the next story about the 12-year-old boy in the Greater Toronto area who is charged in a shooting incident. It was not a fatal shooting, but a shooting nonetheless. And not only was that 12-year-old boy out on bail at the time of the shooting, but since his arrest in this most recent shooting, he has again been released on bail. I'm at a loss here. I truly am. That was just from one section, 2 pages of my weekend paper. And then you hear Ontario Premier Doug Ford talking about how he's going to get tougher with the people who engage in dangerous driving behaviors and cause injury or death. And maybe it's just the stories that are making news. Maybe we're talking about them more, but it's starting to feel like, to me, there are people doing bad things everywhere. And I know that's not the case, but we are promising to get tough on this thing, that thing, and the other thing. When did we stop getting tough on it? Why are these things happening? It really needs some attention here. And Mayor Jake, thank you for sending me on that tangent, because I read my paper and I asked myself, I even said to my beloved, remind me again why I look forward to my morning coffee and my weekend papers. And I put the papers down and said, I just need a palate cleanser right now, because it was some tough reading on the weekend. But this, it seems to be, is where we are at. And I'm trying to wrap my head around it, and I'm trying to figure it out. But I'm as frustrated as all HE double hockey sticks. I can promise you that. Kyle, you're on Rant or Rave. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I got a rave to David for agreeing with me on Friday's call.
Oh, that was you that was calling the lawyer?
Yep.
Oh, sorry.
You brushed me off about it.
I did, because you're right. I said that's why I had that second thoughts over the weekend, because I took you very literally, like somebody's in Kyle's house, and instead of calling 911, he's calling the lawyer. I get you were being a little bit facetious, but I totally get what you meant.
Like, you know what I'm saying?
Totally.
Say, right? You know, everything they say will be used against in the court of law. And
yep.
I don't know the law. I didn't go to school to know the laws, right?
I got you.
I can't defend myself. So I just want a huge rave to him. And Mike, no offense, but just maybe next time, try not to brush me off and understand where I'm coming from, my friend.
I'll tell you what, Kyle. Yeah? Swing the baseball bat first, make the phone call second.
No, I understand. I totally get it, my friend. I appreciate it. Thanks, Mike.
All right, Kyle, appreciate the call. Good to hear from you today. Liam, you're on Rant or Rave. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike. It's been a while since we last spoke. It's nice to hear from you.
It's nice to hear from you. I was glad to see your name pop up on my screen.
Yeah. I wanted to shout out to the Waterloo Ravens U22 Elite Hockey Team. They are now streaming on YouTube this year, and you might hear me do play-by-play later this season. So if there's any girls that are looking for hockey at similar level to the Kitchener Rangers, but for girls, check out Waterloo Ravens on YouTube.
The Ravens is a fantastic program. Well done by you. So if we look up Waterloo Ravens on YouTube, is that where we're going to find it, Liam?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We'll find that. And there's a couple of games already posted since we just launched this past weekend. We were playing Blue Water Hawks and also Toronto Leaside this past weekend. And you can find their videos on YouTube for that.
Great stuff.
Also, I wanted to mention how I'm excited that the Memorial Cup is coming to either Kitchener or Guelph, given those two cities have been places I've grown up around. And I do think that regardless of the results, both of them should work together to accommodate fans and stuff, because I feel that sporting events can be a bit overwhelming at times for communities. And I feel like some communities are going to have more trouble with handling it more than others, and they should seek help from their neighbors in order to be able to have a successful turnout with it.
Liam, appreciate the call. I think we're in really good hands in these here parts with both Guelph and Kitchener in the running to host the Memorial Cup, and I think they could certainly, one market, the unsuccessful market, could probably help the other out because we're so close to one another once that final decision is made. I think Kitchener's got a really strong chance of this. The answer will be given towards the end of November, early December for the rights to host the Memorial Cup in 2027. Next spring, at the end of this upcoming hockey season, the tournament will be held in Kelowna, and then in May of 2027, it's either going to be Kitchener or Guelph. Sean, you're on Rant or Rave. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I've got a bit of a rant. It's probably a silly thing to a lot of people. Okay, you go to the drugstore, you have to go to the pharmacy, right? Why is there not a cent-free way to get from the front to the pharmacy? Every time I go in the pharmacy, I gotta walk past a perfume counter, and I have allergies, and to get to the drug counter, I gotta walk past the perfume. Why is there not a drug-free pass to the back?
Well, Sean, I'll tell you exactly why. And I think you know why, because the further you have to go into the store to get to the place where you're picking up your prescription, the better the chance that you're going to find something in that store to buy before you leave. Impulse shopping and capitalism for the win, my friend. Quick break. Back with more rants and or raves on the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. See, Clive is taking the comment about calling your lawyer before calling the police if somebody invades your home, as literally as I did on Friday. Clive's email to Mike at 570news.com. Okay, but how many people have lawyers and know their phone numbers? That was the spirit in which I took the comment at first blush on Friday. No, you're not going to call a lawyer. Stop being silly. But I get the sentiment generally, because anything that you say once the police arrive may leave them with no choice but to charge you with something. So anyway, these are interesting times for the right to defend one's person and property with reasonable force should they be under threat. Let's get back to the phones on Rant or Rave. Brian, good afternoon.
Hi, Mike. I've talked to this before about the lenient laws concerning drunk drivers.
Oh, my goodness. Tell me about it.
That they literally get away with murder. And they're let out of jail very easily and go about doing the same thing again. So I'm just wondering, do you know of any politician who is also broaching this subject and trying to get those laws changed so that, like, if they're given a year in jail and they plead, well, you know, I'm the only breadwinner, if I'm in jail, my family will starve and so forth. So then the judge says, well, okay, you can serve your time on weekends. But then they know that if they wait until the last minute to report on Friday night, the jail's going to be full, so they will be credited with having been in jail while they're still at home. And I think this should be, you know, if you're given a year in jail, that there's no consideration for anything else. Yeah. You were in jail for a year.
Brian, listen, I get where you're coming from. And that's sort of one of the places I'm at with what I shared with you before. Out on bail, murders. Out on bail, shoots. Back out on bail. Let's be tougher on people who drive under the influence, etc. We are already led to believe, and I do believe this, that there is such a backlog in our system that cases aren't even being heard before they're being thrown out and people are discharged back out onto the streets. Do we have room within the system to even start processing all of these people? And since there seems to be so many people doing so many bad things, do we have room in the system to house them? Should we throw the proverbial book at them? I get where you're coming from. And you make me think of one of the other things that is a frustration for me when it comes to all this talk about road safety. We can do whatever we want with speed cameras. We can put roads on diets to make them, you know, more difficult to drive fast on, etc. Until we're getting down to the impaired drivers, right? And the distracted drivers. We're not really, we're doing things that we want people to believe will help, but we're missing the big parts here. And that's something that Sweden has figured out. And with almost 2,500 speed cameras in their country, they're starting to say it's not just about speeds. It's certainly not just about speeds in these quote unquote community safety zones. This is about impaired drivers, people who drive without licenses. You can take somebody's license away. It's not stopping them from getting back behind the wheel. There are gaps in the system for sure. Mike, rant or rave, over to you. Good afternoon.
Hi, Mike. I got a couple rants today. I agree with Drewe about Melanie Jolie and her managing of that $5 billion fund. And some of the comments that she made about the steel industry and the aluminum industry really, really troubled me. And it shows she neither has the capability or the competence to manage such a fund. Mike, I spent 28 years and 43 years in IT and process automation. 28 years of that was in the steel and mining and metals industry. She hasn't got a clue, Mike. She's saying that they're going to Canada's steel industry is going to transfer over to the construction and the defense industry. Mike, the most profitable area for steel right now is not construction and it's not defense. It's automotive. And what I'm very, very troubled by, and what Drewe alluded to, is they are going to give up the automotive industry to please Trump. He's been prime minister for 6-7 months. He hasn't been able to come up with a deal, and he just keeps caving into Trump. Mike, I know enough about the supply chain in North America. If Carney really wanted to harm it, he could shut down the automotive industry, because in Canada we make some specialty steels called ultra-high strength steel, which are very light and go into the automotive. Also, Canada makes the majority of tin in North America for food products. So Carney, to me, has been a big disappointment. He's not defending workers. He's not defending our industry. And yes, I know it takes time to switch, to reorient our trade and everything like that. But he needs to start showing some guts. Now, I'm very disappointed also in the NDP with their cisgender stuff.
All right, Mike, I'm running short on time, so I know what you're talking about here with the people who are going to apply for the leadership, but just as quickly as you can get to the point, because I want to get to other callers.
Yeah, I just think the NDP is missing the boat here, because the Liberals are weak right now. And what did they do? They went off into the wild woods. They're not Ed Broadbent, they're not Jack Layton, and they're certainly not Tom Mulcair. That's it, Mike.
All right, Mike, appreciate that. And the quick wrap up on it. I think the federal NDP are just pushing themselves closer and closer to the brink of absolute irrelevance. Paul, rant or rave, good afternoon.
Well, I got a statement and I got a question for you. And when I ask the question, it doesn't mean that you just hang up on me, okay? Okay. So here goes. I heard on the news today that it is now official. Waterloo Region experienced its highest summer temperatures in 70 years.
That is correct.
Okay. That means it was actually hotter in 1955, because that's what they're saying. We passed a 1955 record. Okay, so if it was so much hotter back in 1955, how's all this climate change and global warming and whatnot working?
Well, it was something that crossed my mind too, Paul, but as I'm sure you recognize, one summer, 1 3-month weather trend does not a climate make. It's simply a weather pattern.
Agreed.
Okay.
So the point is, we set a weather record. Now, I can't quite remember back to 1955. I was only born then, but apparently they were celebrating with some nice weather the year that I was born. At some point, we're going to pass the 2025 record. It may take another 70 years, but, they keep coming up with these records and everything else, say we broke this record, we broke that record.
It probably won't take 70 years to break this one, Paul.
Well, how long do you think?
I don't know, but I will bet you it won't take 70. Hence the warming of the planet and the changing of the climate.
Yeah, we fixed the acid rain problem. We fixed the hole in the ozone layer. We fixed all these other things. So many times the Earth is going to be destroyed.
All right, I'm down to 60 seconds, Paul.
We've done it before. We'll do it again. Stop panicking, people. That's it.
All right, Paul. I thought, though, I heard us agree that 1 3-month weather trend does not a climate make. Look, I understand your concerns around alarmism. We now have this thing we call eco-anxiety because young people are so concerned. They are anxious. It's impacting their mental health, their concerns over our environment and the future of our planet. But I don't think there's any disputing. In fact, I know there's no disputing the data that says the planet is actually warming, right? So can we dial back the alarmism a little bit and not make it sound like there are only 12 years left? Sure. something like that. But let's not get too carried away. We will break the record, the temperature record we had this summer, and we'll do it in shorter than 70 years. Of that, you can be darn sure. Rant or Rave continues on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. On Mondays, the Talkback Hour is reserved for your rants and or raves. It's a tradition here on the show on Mondays. Rant because you're upset about something, rave because something's got you smiling on a sunny Monday. Let's get right back to the phones. Janice, good afternoon.
Hi, Mike. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Not too bad. We listen to you every day.
Bless your heart. Thank you, Janice. Thank you very much for that.
You can put us on for whatever your number you're at for callers.
That's going to make you number 100. You said us. Are there two of you, Janice?
My husband and I.
All right, 162 and 163.
All right.
What's your hubby's name?
Sid.
Sid. Janice and Sid. Okay. What's on your mind, Janice?
Well, I'm raving. This morning I was listening to you. You mentioned about the monkeys.
Yes.
I was a foot away from each one of those monkeys, and they were very nice. They said hi to me, everything. They were really a sweetheart.
Where? When?
Back when they played at the CNE.
No kidding.
Yeah, I belonged to St. John Ambulance. I was a cadet back then, of course. And we got to do the first aid down at the CNE, and one of the pros that we had were we went to concerts and did the first aid there, and they were there. And I tell you, they were the nicest guys you could ever meet.
Isn't that a great story? They say never meet your idols, but in this case it worked out, eh?
Oh, yeah. Like I even met Bobby Sherman and Harry Belafonte and everything.
You had yourself a great little job back in the day.
Oh, I was in St. John Ambulance for over 30 years.
Good for you. And that is that volunteer, Janice?
Yes, it is.
That's what I thought. Volunteer. Yeah, so good on you.
So,
well, thanks for sharing that.
I just thought I'd phone in and let you know that you were right about the monkeys. They were a good singing group, and they were good, and they were nice.
Well, thanks again to you and Sid for listening too, Janice.
Okay, thanks, hon.
You take care.
You too.
Bye now.
Bye.
Love to hear it. And going back to that story, so we talked about the monkeys during This Week in Music History with Brian Allison, which is something we do every Monday morning at 11. If you didn't know that, now you do. Make sure you're eavesdropping on those conversations, and maybe something will spark a memory for you like it did for Janice. I remembered the story that I heard told by Bob Segarini, who was a rock radio announcer several decades ago, and I thought Bob Segarini's nickname was the Iceman, but I didn't believe myself. And John sent me an email to Mike at 570news.com and confirmed, indeed, it was the Iceman. That's the name he went by on the air towards the end of his career. And I also shared the story. That's why I brought Segarini up, because he had told a story while I was listening to him one night about living in LA, and he happened to be in a neighborhood across the street from one of the monkeys. And I thought it was Davy Jones, but it was Mickey Dolenz. John reminded me via email. He did my research for me. Thank you, John. He said the story checks out. Mickey Dolenz was building a little helicopter in his garage back in the day, one of the members of the Monkees. And that all struck a chord with Janice, who remembers being about a foot away from those lads who were not only good musicians, she says, but nice people too. Don't you like it when it works out that way? When you meet the people that you admire, you like their music, you like their acting, you like their whatever, and you meet them in real life and they don't let you down. Those are good stories for sure. Jason, you're next on Rant or Rave. Good afternoon.
Hey, Mike, I got a rave.
All right.
I just want to give a shout out to our events team here, City of Kitchener, for Saturday's Endless Summer. It was fantastic. I'd say 8,000 to 9,000 people were there. It was so well organized. The crowd was just incredible compared to last year. Mind you, the weather a heck of a lot better than last year. The acts were just dynamite. My kids had a great time. Our friends' kids had a great time. Nobody was unruly. It was perfectly organized and set up. And so I just want to give a shout out, not just for this event, but all the events we had this whole summer, way back in Canada Day. When we look at other cities, I think Kitchener, by far and away, knocks these cities out of the park. It's free. Free music. Who doesn't love free stuff? And who doesn't love good music for free? That's the one. Hey, Steelers 1-0. Aaron Rodgers jumped back in the time machine yesterday.
Settle down. Don't get carried away, Jay. Don't get carried. I watched him try to move out of that pocket, too. He looked like me out there. But it was a good start.
Have a great day, Mike.
Thanks, Jay. You too. I appreciate it. I said this at the beginning of the show because one of our regulars, Greg, sent me an email late last night to Mike at 570news.com. He says, "Are you eating crow now?" No. Listen, I am loyal to my teams, probably loyal to a fault when it comes to those Toronto Maple Leafs, but I'm loyal. I am a Pittsburgh Steelers fan through and through, but I am not, and nor will I ever be, an Aaron Rodgers fan. Yes, he had a very good day yesterday. I hope he has 16 more very good days, and the Pittsburgh Steelers have a perfect, undefeated season. But I don't care for Aaron Rodgers, to be honest with you, and I'm not convinced that he will remain healthy. But I'm going to enjoy it while it lasts, and it was a great start to the season for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I don't feel like I have to eat crow on that. I don't really care for our quarterback. I'm just being honest with you, but I will always cheer for my favorite teams. And my favorite NFL team is the Pittsburgh Steelers. On Jason's note about endless summer, downtown Kitchener, the weekend that was, we had Steve Roth, the manager of special events at the City of Kitchener, on the air with us on Friday morning. Around 10:45. No, 10:30 Steve was here, pardon me. If you missed the conversation, please do go back and check it out on our website, kitchener.citynews.ca. There's an archive of the show, or even easier, on the podcast. Check it out on the Seeker app. That's the one we recommend. Seek Your Sounds, SEEKR, Seeker. And check out Friday's show from 10:30 with Steve Roth, the manager of special events in the City of Kitchener, because I'm with Jason. The weekend was great with Endless Summer and the free performances that were put on at Victoria Park. But this whole summer was a banger. Like, is that okay language to use? Is that what the kids say? I don't even know. But it was a terrific summer with all kinds of free programming, music, entertainment in downtown Kitchener. Really got things animated, felt vibrant, walking down Gaukel Block. It was just alive with activity, and it was really cool. That's what summers are supposed to be all about, and I do think, like Jason said, that the City of Kitchener absolutely knocked it out of the park this year. And listen, loved buskers, loved the Canada Day Parade in Cambridge, buskers in Waterloo. All of our municipalities, I know, working hard, doing great things. I do live in Kitchener. It's my hometown. I'm as loyal to that as I am to my sports teams. And I thought Kitchener just did a bang-up job. So kudos to all involved for the summer that was. Grant, you are next on Rant or Rave. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How's our monkey?
Your monkey Mike is just fine. How are you, Grant?
Yeah, we're just doing fine.
That's good. I'm not building a helicopter in my garage, though. I don't have a garage.
What do you mean?
I don't have a garage. I can't build a helicopter.
Why would you build a helicopter?
Because that's what the Monkees did. Mickey Dolenz of the Monkees built a helicopter in his garage.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That's okay. I said that before, but you must have missed that part of the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay.
The Blue Jays coach, I guess he assumes that New York was reading their signs. What do you think?
I think that any baseball team that is actually trying to win will try to steal signs from the other team. And frankly, I don't blame them. I don't know why people get so upset about that. If you don't want people to steal your signs, make your signs better. Hide them better. I don't care what you do, but if I was standing on second base or I was in the dugout, I'd be trying to steal signs too, Grant. I would be. Sorry, does that make me a bad person?
I just think it's kind of silly that they lost fair and square, in my opinion.
The Blue Jays?
Yeah,
Sure. Well, they couldn't hit with runners in scoring position on the weekend.
And it really hurts without the snake being out.
The snake.
Bo
Bichette. He played on Sunday, didn't he?
No, he was sitting out because of his shins.
Oh my goodness, I didn't know that part. I didn't pay. I was watching too much of the football on Sunday.
Yeah, that's another game that I don't understand. I know I mentioned this a while back. If I ran the league, there would be no kneeling after the games because the only reason why they kneel is so the opposing team cannot beat them. And there's no other sport that there's a timer on it that you can kneel. They should play it straight out till the end of the game, and I think that's sportsmanlike.
All right.
The other way, it's not.
Listen, Grant, I hear you. I think the final minutes of a football game take so long anyway. I'm glad when they get to the kneeling down part. And I'll just go back to this stealing signs thing in baseball. I think if you can do it, I say this, and I know it's frowned upon, but if you are skilled enough to keep up with the cards coming out of the shoe at a blackjack table, and you can count those cards to determine if there are more low cards or high cards left in that shoe and adjust your bet accordingly, you should be allowed to do that. I don't know why casinos get so upset about it. If you're not using any electronic device, you're just using that gray matter between your ears, you go right ahead, count those cards, steal those signs. It's up to the other team to make them unstealable, in my opinion. I guess, am I going to get called by the morality cops now? Like, that's pretty unethical, right? I'm just trying to win, baby. That's the goal of the game, isn't it? To win. Just win, baby. That's what they said in Rocky 2. Just win, baby. Norma, good afternoon. You're on Rant or Rave.
Hi, good afternoon. Number 31 here.
Norma, Farwell's Force member, official member, number 31. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My rant is against Marjorie Knight and the segment that you had her on concerning the treatment of a person of color who was in a tent. You know, I'm sorry, but all they had to do, this person had to do, was comply with the request to come out of their tent the first time or the second time or the third time or even the 12th time. But they did not. And I cannot believe that she is not supporting the actions of the police. I think everyone, regardless of whether you're racialized or black or white or purple or green, should be complying with law enforcement. And for that reason, yes, it was horrific, but, what were they supposed to do? He could have shot that gun through the tent and hit any one of them or anyone around. He didn't comply, and people need to obey the police force. That's bottom line. That's it.
All right.
And I cannot believe that she's defending not defending the actions of the police department.
I understand where you're coming from, and I appreciate the call, and I understand that you want this, if you'll forgive the turn of phrase, to be a black and white issue. I don't think it's quite as black and white as you want it to be, but I completely understand that point of view. As opposed to ranting against Marjorie and her point of view on this, maybe we can just disagree with the thought or the idea as opposed to ranting about the person. And I think we do understand that historically there has been more violence towards racialized communities, historically. And that's why we end up with these conversations still in our communities today. But it was the life of a police officer responding to a high-risk call playing out before our very eyes. And I'm not sure that we like what we see. And I think a lot of us look at that and say, I'm glad it's not me doing that job. We'll take a break, come back with more on Rant or Rave. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Talkbacks on Mondays are for rants or raves. Let's get right back to the phones. Ernie, good afternoon.
Hey, Mike, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, yeah. I didn't hear that
normally before.
That's okay. That's okay. You've got some courage calling today, my 0-1 friend.
I try to call in when it's good and bad, and I think I've mentioned that before. Like, even I don't want to be that, I find you make a weak stance when you can only take your victories. You got
Attaboy.
too, right?
Yep.
But I got a bit of a rant here.
Sure.
For one, that was just wild what happened yesterday. No one to blame but ourselves. It was just wild.
Yeah, the Buffalo Bills came back and beat Ernie's Baltimore Ravens. Tough loss.
Thanks, Mike. And there's thanks for whatever. Anyways, we were only up by like a bazillion points, I think it was at that time, too, that it should have been game over. But when I'm, now, I have people I haven't spoken to in years that, all of a sudden, they don't even ask me if I'm still alive. You know what I mean? Say, hey, what happened last night? What happened? I don't even know who you are anymore. Do we still talk? Dropping Zayner off at school today. The teacher, I don't even know who he is. Man, hey, what happened yesterday? And I wasn't even wearing any gear. I'm like, do you even know what my name is? How's this going to work out when you're actually Zane's teacher? Maybe then. But I got people, there's cousins that I didn't even know my cousins apparently that reached out, that are talking to me this morning, sending me messages. I don't even know who you are. Mike? Come on.
Sometimes, Ernie, you just got to put the phone away.
So, and that's where, that's why I look forward to good people like you that would be like, you know what, Ernie, I hope you're doing okay today. I'm really sorry for it. I know you don't feel that way, but those are those people that I still care about. You know what I mean? Those are the good ones.
Buddy, I've been there. Anybody who's a sports fan has been on the wrong end of the day after a bad loss.
So, but it's, the war's not over yet. It's just a battle here. And, you know what? Be ahead of the division right now. Be happy about that, or at least ties.
I am happy about that. I was going to say, you just keep looking up in the division. You'll see us Pittsburgh Steelers up there, pal.
Enjoy this time right now, Mike.
All right, Ernie, will do. Thanks, buddy. Good to hear from you today. A Baltimore Ravens fan suffered a tough loss last night. My Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cincinnati Bengals, my nephew's favorite team, tied for first in the division. It's one game, but you enjoy the wins when they come. Jethro, good afternoon. Rant or rave? Hello, Jethro.
You're getting Castro here.
I beg your pardon?
This is Castro, not Jethro.
Castro.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. The name was very strangely spelled on my screen. Castro, my friend, my apologies. What would you like to say?
Here's my take on the police, Mike.
Yes.
Police officer, at the end of the day, he wants to go home to his wife and his kids, okay? If a person, black or white, pointed a gun at the police officer, he has all the right to defend himself. I have no problem with that, black or white. But I'm listening to all these white people calling in this morning about they're giving the police props. If you notice, there's an history, Mike, where the police officers in Kitchener, not just Toronto, shoot black people for no reason. There was a young guy on Brybeck Street with a knife, a little pen knife, and he was mentally ill, and two trained police officers shot him and killed him. My mother lived on Sterling Avenue, and there was a white guy inside a room for one day with a gun, and the police talk and take him out. They're quick to shoot black people, Mike, and there's no denying of that.
I'm not aware of the incident on Frederick Street that you mean, Castro. I'm sorry.
No. Brybeck, I said. Brybeck.
Oh, Brybeck. My apologies. Yeah. Yes, I remember. Okay. Yeah. Yes.
Guy had a pen knife, and the police could have easily taser him or shoot him in his foot. They shoot him and kill him, and they were begging him not to shoot, and they kill him. Why didn't they go kill the guy on Margaret Avenue with a bow and arrow when he killed the guy jogging? They don't kill white people, Mike. They talk them into it. But white people can't see that. They're only seeing one side of the story. They never kill a white person. They always talk them and bring them in. But as you're black, if you have a pencil in your hand, police officers are trained and they tell you, "Oh, I was scared for my life." Then there shouldn't be police officers.
Castro, I appreciate the point of view and thank you for calling in today.
That's all you have to say, eh?
All right. I have to. I'm out of time. I'm sorry. So yes, that's all I can.
No problem. No problem. No problem.
Thank you, Castro. I appreciate it. All I would say is, I always work against generalizations. I would not say never. They never shoot the white person. But as I said earlier, when Norma called, historically we can understand where the idea comes from, because statistics bear it out, that the violence is far more often perpetrated against Black people. We had a really unfortunate, high-risk takedown in Kitchener, and it looks as though everything went the way it was supposed to go, but it's uncomfortable to see it in plain view. And that is all the time that we have on the show today, but I'll tell you what, I'll come back tomorrow morning at 9, okay? You join me too. My name's Mike Farwell. You are a force for good. Bye for now.